and welcome into a very special edition of the Task Force. This is a show that I started for those that are maybe watching for the first time. As soon as quarantine hit, as a way to stay connected to my listeners and viewers, people that I've been able to speak to for years working at 97.1 The Ticket. And obviously, we know we're in the middle of a pandemic right now and things have changed. I haven't been on air at my station since early March, and I wanted a way to connect and then to be able to do this show. And we're going to be talking with a guy later named Scott Miller, who reached out to me and said, if you ever want to do a show on recovery or addiction or mental illness, I'd be happy to be involved. He's a big inspiration for this. I was always planning on doing a show like this, but to know that there are so many out there that wanted to be involved, everyday people, professionals. I've got the president of the National Alliance of Mental Illness, the Miami Metro chapter, the biggest in Michigan, coming out, Leon Judd, in just a bit. This is a very, very tough time for so many. Not just because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but also because we have a mental health crisis in this country. We have an opiate crisis in this country. And all I want to do, the best to my ability, and what I've always tried to do on various shows, when I brought this up on 97.1 or the various mediums I've worked on in my broadcasting career, is try to help people. Because I can't tell people what to do. I can tell them what's worked for me. And that's why I've got an incredible group of people. I'm just blown away. I'm about to cry already. And I thought it wouldn't happen for a minute, that want to be part of this and share their stories, share their experience, strength, and hope, and try to save as many lives and inspire as many lives as we can. It's one of these things where, we can't do this alone. We need to know that we are there for each other. And I'm doing this show for many reasons, but I'm also doing this show in honor of a great friend of mine and a very, very close friend of my father's, who sadly and tragically took his own life on Sunday. His name is Mark Okster. He was a beautiful soul. And it's heartbreaking. And I always wanted to do shows and have done shows like this, but it's even more in the forefront right now when I lose yet another person to suicide. We've lost too many to overdoses. And I want to do this show in Mark's memory. I know some of his friends are watching. I know my father's watching. And he was a giant of a person, not just in stature physically, but with his heart. And I know he's in a better place, but I want us to do whatever we can to keep people like Mark on this earth physically for as long as we can. I love you, Mark. He was always so kind to me. He lost his son to a drug overdose about 5 years ago and always looked at me as being able to live the life his son wasn't able to. And I took that as a very serious mantle in my life to be the best I could to live the legacy that his son wasn't able to. So it's with a heavy heart, but with a hopeful heart, that I do this show in Mark's honor. I love you, Mark. King of the Oaks, as I call him. Rest in peace, my friend. And I want to bring in a good friend of mine, a really good friend of mine that I've known for a long time, the great Jake Wallach. Jake, first up, my friend, it's a coveted spot, but I'm very grateful you're here. We go back a long ways. You actually worked with me in 97.1 The Ticket for a little while, and I'm extremely grateful to know you. I know you've had your moments, your tough times, and I'm lucky that I've been able to, in a small part, help you in the little ways I've tried to. But it's great. First off, it's great to see you, Jake.
It's great to see you, Dan. And I would say little ways would be an understatement. You've helped me tremendously. First of all, give my condolences to you. I knew that your dad's friend passed away. I did not know until now that it was from suicide. Either way, it's never a good thing to see, but it hits me especially strong when I hear that it was through those means. I really appreciate you having me on and being able to tell my story. I don't tell my story often these days. Not that I hide away from it, because it's always a part of my life and it has made me the man who I am today because of it. But it's definitely something that I've hoped to share at some point in my life when I recovered. And I believe I'm at that point now. But mental illness for me and depression and anxiety wasn't something that I dealt with my entire life. It hit me about my freshman year of college. I started to notice I became extremely sad for no reason, suicidal. everything that really came along with it. And I was so focused on going to class and recovering because I didn't really know what was going on, that there were times when I would go into a psychiatric institution and I would fight my way to get out by Monday just so I could have enough energy to get to class that next day. And it got to the point my freshman year of school where I woke up in the morning and all the energy I had was to get up from my bed, walk into the shower, and I couldn't even get myself to class. That's when I knew it was time that I needed to go home and get help. I left school, I came back home, and things did not get better from there. Over the span of the next 3 to 5 years, I was in, and it's crazy when you think about it, because when you think about being being put in a psychiatric ward, you think that those are such huge moments in somebody's life. Right. They would remember everything about it. But I was on so many medications, and whatever I was going through was taking so much out of me. I can't even remember most nights that I spent in there. But over the span of the next 3 to 5 years, I was in about anywhere between 5 to 7 different mental psychiatric institutions. I don't know how I got through it, to be honest. I didn't have any energy with the meds that I was on. I was shooting up weight 50 pounds 2 to 3 months, and then I'd go drop down those 30 to 50 pounds the next 2 to 3 months, just because the medications I was on, everything was just off balance. I had suicidal thoughts just about every night. I was thinking negatively about my future, everything. I couldn't think positively. I had everything going right for me in my life. So those who are dealing with mental health, and they say, well, it seems like everything's going right for you, why are you so sad? It's not necessarily under your control. I somehow fought through it. And I remember there were nights when I was in the psychiatric ward where I told myself, if I was only able to fight through this, if I was only able to survive this, I hope that one day I would be able to be strong enough to share my story and help somebody else. But I will tell you that my story, I can talk for hours and hours, but I'm going to keep it pretty short and kind of jump ahead to how I've learned to say thank you for what I experienced. Obviously, I wish I did not have to go through it, but because of what I went through, I would say that it has made me enjoy life to the fullest. When I hit that rock bottom, when you know what rock bottom feels like, everything else in life, when you recover from that, just feels amazing. Just waking up every day and just being at work around my coworkers and friends, 99% of which don't even know what I went through before, and they would be absolutely shocked if I were to tell them the story, just because I'm such an opposite person than I was 3 to 5 years back. I just appreciate life more, and thank God I don't go through what I did. I don't know necessarily how things turned around for me. It was just one of those things where through therapy and through help of, thank God, my family and friends, including you, Dan, just the people who I had in my life to help me get through what I went through, was just huge. And I really pray that anybody who went through what I had to go through would have those people in their life that they could reach out to. And to be honest, Dan, when you helped me out that one night, I knew you, but it's not like I see you all the time around, and we're I'm right. We weren't that close at the time, but I think I reached out to you, and like I said, my memory is absolutely horrible, and it's actually what I went through is actually ruined my memory even up to this point. When I'm healthier, can't remember things as well. But I don't know how I ended up reaching out to you, but I know that you speak about mental illness and you use your platform in such a great way. And I reached out to you one night, and you were there for me when I didn't think anybody else was. And that's what your head tells you at that time, that nobody is there for you. And you were there for me, and you had me come play putt-putt golf with you and your friend. And that really...
Dave Rieger. Great Dave Rieger.
Yeah. That really changed that night around for me. And just one night alone, when you're going through something like that, sometimes you just got to get through that night somehow. I remember it was every single time when the sun went down, I would get suicidal. And I didn't know how to deal with it by my own until years down the line when I learned coping mechanisms through therapy and a lot of other different things. And you were there for me, and I had my family and friends. But at this point in my life, all I want to do is be able to say thank you for everything that I went through in my life, because it's really grown me into who I am today. And I just want to be able to use what I went through to help other people in my life. I just recently got into a social work program at the University of Michigan for grad school. It's the #1 program in the nation. I did not think I was going to get in there. I did get in, and 2 years from now, I will be going into grad school for it, and with a specialty in mental health and substance abuse. I hope to be able to work in the hospitals and help children and families dealing with not only mental illness, but I know just how big, even though I did not go through it personally, just how big substance abuse in today's America is as well. And I just hope to be able to dedicate my life to that for the rest of my life once I go into grad school. And that's why I say thank you for what I went through, because if it wasn't for what I went through, there's chances are I'm not doing that for the rest of my life, or plan on doing it for the rest of my life. And who knows, hopefully, even if I could just help 1 or 2 families, 1 or 2 children who are going through depression, who are going through anxiety, who feel like their life is not worth living anymore. If I can just help 1 or 2 of those people for the rest of my life, then what I went through and what I was able to survive and get through will be worth it. All those tough nights and nights I never thought I would be able to get through will 100% be worth it. And I just want to thank you for using your platform and letting me share my story that I do not share often enough. And it definitely needs to be talked about. The stigma needs to be gone, especially for men as well. Men, it's even more tougher for us to speak about what we went, things that we go through in our life, and it needs to be spoken, and it could really help other people as well as yourself. So thank you, Dan, and I love you and I appreciate you, and I just can't thank you enough.
I love you too, and it's so beautiful to hear that, and it's so beautiful to see the transformation, and that now you want to go and help others, and that's what it's all about. But I have to, before I let you go, ask you this: are the Lions a playoff team?
I cannot say that with our current head coach. I can't say it. I think he's a good game planner throughout the week, but when it comes to his in-game coaching skills, I just am yet to trust him. I'm very intrigued what we have with Swift. I think that was a great draft pick, and it's an exciting draft pick, but we all know that it doesn't matter what running back we take, it's going to come down to the offensive line. So far, what I've seen over the past few years with Patricia, he's very big at intertwining the offensive linemen. I'm not a big fan of that. I think we have to get 5 guys, build some chemistry. And until we develop a run game, I'm a believer in Stafford. As much as I believe that we should have taken Tua as well. I think you can believe that you should have taken Tua and also be a fan of Stafford, but that's just an opinion of mine. But until we get a running game, Stafford isn't going to be able to take this team on his back. And I'm also a firm believer Stafford is a top 12 quarterback in this league who's capable of taking us to heights. But without the proper running game and without the proper coaching, I don't believe that we are there yet. So I'm going to say no for this year.
Now, you've always been capable of being my co-host, but I think you're actually ready to be my co-host now. And for those who don't know, Jake has called my shows on 97.1 various times. Jake, I think the next time I do a live show, I think you're my co-host. You're ready. Well, you just sounded like a pro right there.
Well, I appreciate it, Dan. Sports is my life, and it's even when I went through what I was going through, that's what really, especially Tigers baseball. Baseball's always will be my number one, but Lions football as well, Michigan. But that was the one thing that I went to when I was always down. That's something that I always had, and thank God that what we were going through these past 3 months and still are going through, I wasn't in the position I was a few years ago, because I don't know how I would have been without even having sports in my life. That's why I really pray for those who, not necessarily those who just care about sports, but those who maybe are missing some of those things that they can't have. They can't be around their family, maybe if they're going through some mental health, and they need those people. I really feel for them and really, really hope that they reach out for help if they need it. I know you have the 24/7 suicide hotline on your screen, the phone number. I know I utilize that multiple times. And you have to do it sometimes. You have to do it. It's just a better choice of sitting there and suffering the whole night. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to carry a knife with you around just because you just don't know what else to do. It's not necessarily that you want to kill yourself, that you want to hurt yourself. You got to ask yourself, is it that you want to hurt yourself, or is it that you just don't want to be in this pain? And for the most part, I believe that people just don't want to be in that pain. They don't want to die, but they just don't want to be in that pain anymore, and they don't know how else to express it. And I really hope that we address this and keep addressing it, keep doing these as much as we can. And that's all I have to say. But Dan, thank you so much. And I want everybody else to be able to have their speak as well on their story, please.
Jake, I couldn't be prouder than you, and please keep sharing that story. And I love you, and I'm very grateful to know you, Jake.
Thanks, Dan. Love you as well. Have a great night.
All right, great stuff. Really appreciate that. And let's go to my man. And I don't know if I should be saying hail to the chief.
No.
Troubadours, because you first off, you're one of my favorite people in the world, but you are the president of the National Alliance of Mental Illness, the NAMI Metro chapter, the biggest in Michigan. The great Leon, John Leon. It's an honor to have you on tonight. It's an honor to know you. And I just gotta, before I get into anything, thank you so much for all that you do. And we're gonna get into some ways that people can get help here in a second. But I just wanted to give you a chance to tell people why you got involved and why you've been able to, in many ways, help and save so many lives, Leon.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you how sorry I am for the loss that you've had. Unfortunately, we hear far too many of those stories, and they seem to get younger and younger. And for Jake, listening to his story, I mean, that's what's going to eliminate the stigma, is people like Jake who are willing to tell their story and the fact that they've gotten through it, because it's a very difficult thing to do. So I've been with NAMI for probably 20 some years, and I've had family members who have had significant illnesses, mental illnesses. 2 of my nephews took their life as a result of mental illness, way too young. These were very young guys. And but the story that Jake told is similar, and it's a story that needs to be told, and that is that young people like Jake, one of our family members who was a very brilliant young guy going off to school when he was 17 years old, to college, and having a psychotic break about his sophomore year. 18 to 24 is a critical time, especially for young guys in college. And so it was about 5 years of hospitalizations and a suicide attempt. But once the acceptance of the illness was there, even with the stigma associated with it, people can finally get the right treatment that they need. And the fact is, there's no cure for mental illness today, but there are a lot of good treatments. Some of the treatments and the medications today are far better than they used to be. Side effects are far less. But in the case of the family member who went back and got his undergraduate degree, got his master's degree, and is a cybersecurity analyst. So, it's a story of success, and it's a story like Jake talks about, and that is it's a story of a battle for your life.
It is.
And what you have to go through in terms of the hospitalizations and the medications and the stigma. So what do we do about stigma? It's one of the things that happens. So my introduction to mental health was as a result of family members who had mental illness. So it was a matter of when things first got started, trying to find help and finding out that there was no help for family members, no place to get information. Nobody wanted to talk to you. The laws against family members who have an adult living with them is almost impossible to get information. So the way to fight the stigma is obviously through education and through support. And so NAMI is how my wife and I got started in the National Alliance on Mental Illness. One of the things about NAMI, no matter where you're at, what county you're in, what state you're in, the processes are pretty much the same because it's a large national organization. And so if you go to a support group in Atlanta or you go to a support group in Florida, The process should be very close to the same in terms of what that support group would look like in Michigan. So NAMI Metro, which we started that affiliate in 2008, we currently have 10 family support groups for family members. And then we have 6 support groups for individuals and that are run by individuals who are in recovery. Everything that NAMI does is peer-to-peer. That's important to know. So it's not professionals. These are family members talking with family members. These are individuals who are dealing with a mental health issue, who are in recovery, helping other people and leading groups of people who are dealing with a mental health issue themselves. The other thing is this education piece. NAMI Metro has a program called Families in Action. It's a 10-week family education program to help family members, because this illness is unlike any other illness. It's very hard to understand, and it's hard to understand a person who has a very serious mental illness. So family members have got to get educated more about what it's like and what it is that they can do, what it is they're doing wrong.
Right.
And some of these things can be very, very helpful in helping people like Jake get through it, helping other people that are struggling but need to get through it. So family members do need to get educated. NAMI Metro has put about 1,700 family members through this education program. So what's happened with the pandemic? Okay, we got all these support groups and we got all this education. And of course, we had to re-educate ourselves as to how to do these things. So most of our support groups are run virtually now using Zoom. And our family education program, we were into week 2 before the pandemic hit. So we postponed it thinking we'd be able to get back right away or pretty soon. That obviously is not happening. So we have started doing those via the internet and using Zoom to get those classes finished. And then as soon as this one is over, we'll be doing starting up another one. So we have those in Oakland and Wayne County and also in Macomb County. And so our primary focus with NAMI Metro is in Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb County. But other counties in Michigan have other NAMI organizations that have very similar things that we would have. We're constantly fighting for changes and improvements in the mental health system. So we have a very large voice as an advocacy organization. So trying to get the legislative body to consider mental health as a real issue that needs to be addressed and improvements that need to be made is something that we constantly do on the local level. And then NAMI National is always constantly working on trying to make changes and improvements to the system at a national level. So we're constantly trying to help people during the pandemic. We've had about an 80% increase in helpline calls. We have 3 helplines that are available. And again, we're an all volunteer organization. So we have volunteers handling our helplines. We have volunteers doing the training. We have volunteers running our support groups. And so we're blessed with having a lot of people who are truly passionate and dedicated. And when you have peers talking with peers, I can tell you it is different than having professionals talking with peers.
It is.
And family members. Very, very different. So you need both, you know, but some of the other ones, you just need to know that you're not alone. And that's what the support groups really help people understand. And it's a way to try and help family members get connected with the right kind of services. And suicide is one of the topics that comes up all the time. We get asked to go out to various organizations to talk about things. I'm going out on Tuesday to a church that has asked us to come out and talk about mental health during the pandemic. And so these things constantly are getting asked. Questions are getting asked, and we're just there to try and help.
Well,
we
Liam,
don't get millions of dollars.
No, and I can't. I mean, I've known you for a long time, so I mean, I'm obviously a little subjective here. You're an incredible human being, and our friend Tony Mitchell, your wife Mary Ellen, and Vince, and all these people. I've been able to work with you guys for the Skins and Pins golf outing.
Yes,
it benefits NAMI Metro, and it's an honor to do that. It's an honor to MC that. And actually, the one I got everything else ready. I'll have to find it on my phone. The one thing I forgot was to get the picture of the the Monster MC. Here, I'm gonna get it. I've got it over here. You gave me this. It's unnecessary.
All you had to do is see this, and you knew who needed to get it.
You gave me it was the 50th anniversary of Skins and Pins, the Monster MC golfer. And it looks like me. It's a really good looking guy right there. But what you guys do is and it's tragic, and I appreciate your kind words about me and my father's friend. And obviously, I wish we could have saved him. But it doesn't mean you give up. We can save others. And by the way, I wanted to throw this up there. We did have a comment, Leon, about what about outside of Michigan? And I know I threw the website up, and I'll throw it up again here. Obviously, NAMI.org is the national one. NAMI Metro is for here in Michigan. If someone's watching right now, and it's a two-part question for you. If someone's watching right now from out of state, out of Michigan, what do you tell them to do? And also, what is the most important thing you could say to someone watching right now that might be struggling, that might be, scared to reach out, that might be afraid, as we always say, stigma stinks, let's destigmatize all of this. What do you say to them when they're watching this, the first step they can make, anonymous, whatever they have to do, so they don't feel like they're alone and they know they can reach out and get the help they need?
Well, call one of the helplines clearly is one of the first things that you can do, and they'll help you get directed. Some people that are afraid to talk to somebody, they now have text lines. They now have lines that they can get to. I know that in Oakland County, Common Ground, the Crisis Center, they have text lines that are manned 24/7. So reach out. That suicide prevention hotline is important. So that's the first thing they got to do is find who they can call. As for out-of-state questions, anybody can get a hold of, go to NAMI.org, just NAMI.org. That'll take you to the national website. They will ask you if you want to find an affiliate. All you have to do is plug in your state and or your county, because most of the affiliate or mostly all of NAMI organizations are run by counties. So if you put in a state and a county, it'll give you the information as to where that affiliate is and the contact information to get a hold of them.
Brilliant stuff, Leon. I got to tell you this. It's people like you that are on the front lines of this that are donating your time. And you're not doing it for the kudos, but you donate hours and hours of your time. And these volunteers you mentioned, and I've been to the benefit events, the galas, obviously the golf outings. And I, from my heart to yours, want to thank you because you have saved a lot of lives. And I'm grateful and honored to be your friend. And I know we're going to save some more tonight. And I know we can continue to save them. And like you said, reach out. Don't be afraid. If you want to text. If you want to call it anonymously, call it anonymously. But please tell someone, because Leon, we got to make sure people know they're not alone. We have to make sure they're not alone.
Absolutely. And the local people, go to NAMI.org, NAMImetro.org. That website, there's a ton of information on there. And if you go to the information links, we have pages and pages of resources that people can access and go to find how they can get connected up with what they're looking for.
Leon, I could talk to you for hours, but I want to get to some other people, but I got to tell you how grateful I am that you're in my life, to have known you for a long time now. And you're one of those people that does it because you care. You're one of those people that makes a difference in so many people's lives. And we are all so lucky and truly grateful to have you in our lives. Please keep up the great work. Send my best to your lovely wife, Mary Ellen. And I know I'm always here in any way I can help you guys. Okay, thank you. And thank you for having me on, and great programming. Now, thank you. Do I have to salute you as Mr. President? I've got the band. I got the brass band over here. They're pushing them back. Thank you so much, Leon, for all you do. I love you. Okay. All right, Dan. Take care. There he is, the great president of NAMI Metro, Leon Judd. Please look at the information on the screen in front of you. Call the helpline, text the helpline, go to the website. If you have someone that you know that's struggling, give them the information. It's all about, from what I've learned, not being too overbearing sometimes, especially when it comes to the mental illness thing and addiction as well, which we're about to get to. And I'm going to briefly tell my story before I get to Scott Miller, and then a great new friend of mine, Jordan Spector, who is working with the Recovery Center and has a great story to tell. And then our good friend Jamie. We're going to get to everybody, by the way. And I know there were a couple people that were trying to get into the room. Only 10 can be in the room at a time. I think we got everyone around. including my best friend, Brad Monash Spoons. But if someone's trying to get in, we'll get you in here. Don't worry. There's no time limit on trying to help people. So please be patient for those people trying to wait. We'll get to everybody. But it's one of those things where we need to let people know they're not alone. And that's why I use the platforms I can. And it was very nice to see this message from my mother, who I love more than anything. And she knows what I've tried to do in my life and what I've gone through. And she raised me and went through the tough times and the great ones. But I know that I've got a microphone occasionally or, a streaming platform, and I want to do whatever I can to let people know that they are not alone. And I've had so many people come up to me in just public situations and thank me, but you don't have to thank me. Just know that it keeps me sober. It keeps me going. And I think we all have to do this for each other, especially now during this pandemic with all the other things going on. It's a very tough time for us all. And being isolated or lonely or not being able to share just makes it that much worse. So and I'll tell a story quickly about my situation in recovery. For those that don't know, and many might know because I've talked about it on air and in different platforms before, but I had a great childhood, raised wonderfully by my mom and dad. I wasn't always an easy kid because I was super hyper, always getting into things. They had to shut to nail the doors shut, the cupboard doors shut, or, keep the fridge locked. But I always was, a happy person. And as I got older, I was more concerned sometimes with making sure everyone liked me, had insecurities, and there was addiction genetically in my family. And I think that was always a part of me. And I say to people a lot that I'm grateful I'm an addict. And some people say, why would you be grateful you're an addict? Because the best parts of me are also part of that. And that's the way I've always looked at it. That, yes, it's been tough to deal with being an addict many, many different times in my life, but it also is part of the best parts of me too. And I wouldn't have one without the other. That's the way I've always looked at it. That's what's helped me get through things. But so as I got through life myself and got older, I had gone to boarding school, was away from home, and then came back, and there was some tumultuous times in the household with my family, nothing, terrible, but I was going through my own things. And I know for me, I started using drugs at a young age, 18, 19 years old. And I say young age because I would have been younger had I not gone to boarding school in California, which helped save my life in many ways. The Cascade School. I know there's some people watching, some old classmates of mine. And it just became this situation where I didn't realize I was going off the deep end in drugs until I woke up one day and it had been 3 months and I'd done heroin every day. And I know for me, being able to share that has helped keep me sober, and being able to try to inspire others and get those messages on Twitter or Facebook, or if I meet someone in person. I'll tell a brief, quick story before I go to our friend Scott Miller here in a second. I moved into this condo complex a year or so ago, and this guy moved in, I would say about 6 months ago, and I became friendlier with him during the quarantine. And he's with a girl who's got 2 kids, are about to have their first. And I go on walks every day, and I ran into him one day, and he said, I didn't want to say this around the kids, but I wanted to tell you this. I was listening to you late at night on 97.1 about 4 years ago. I was 4 years sober, and I was really struggling, and I was on my way to get liquor. He was someone that struggled with alcohol. And he said, I heard what you were talking about. I can't remember what the topic was, but you had brought up addiction and sobriety and all that stuff and recovery. And he heard me talking and drove back home. And then that day that he saw me, he was celebrating 8 years sober. And he said, I never thought I'd get the chance to thank you. And I'll pull out one of my great and favorite lines from Batman Begins. When at the end, then Lieutenant Gordon, Gary Oldman says, I never got a chance to thank you. And Batman's like, and you never have to. I don't do this for thanks. I do this because you inspire me by letting me help you. And it's stories like that, which is why I wanted to do this show tonight and do many more like it, and why I use the platforms I have to try to help people. Because one of the biggest things people have told me is that when they hear me say something about this, whether on the radio or on a show I do online or whatever it is, Twitter, they know they're not alone. And there are so many people that didn't get, have parents that sent them to rehab, or, I got an intervention when I was younger. They didn't have the resources, didn't know who to contact. And by sharing the fact that they're not alone, or hearing another human being say that, they were able to find a way to have that courage to ask for help. And that's what happened with me. My parents, this last time before I got sober, did not know I was using. I was working at a restaurant. We're going to talk to one of my good friends. I talked with him earlier that used to work with me at J. Alexander's. I was doing tremendous amounts of drugs. I was not happy. And I remember it was about me being ready to choose a different path. And when I chose it, and I called my uncle, who now sits past, but had several problems like me, and shared my story with him and started crying. And it was the first human being I told in months that I was using. They'd call my mom and bawl my eyes out, call my friend Cliff Early, who had like 8 years sober at that point. I met him in rehab, told him, called my friend from work, said, can I come stay with you? He'd take me to the hospital. And he did. And I didn't want opiates to come down from opiates. I made the decision. And January 22nd will be 10 years sober from drugs and alcohol. And everyone's got a different story, but that's what worked for me. And that's why I want to do the show tonight. That's why I want to bring in all these wonderful people that are willing to share their story. And let's go and start with Scott here. Scott Miller, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to do a show on this in this platform for a while, but you reached out to me a couple months ago and said, if you ever do a show like this, you would love to be involved. So in many ways, you inspired this, my friend. And I mean, it's not about keeping tabs of how many you saved, but we've already saved some people's lives tonight, I think. And you're a big part of that. So thank you, Scott.
I thank you, man. I appreciate it. I know you say you don't want to be, you don't want people to say thank you for using your platform. But it's important, man. There's not enough people out there that are talking about recovery. We hear about the overdoses, we hear about all the horrible war stories, but we rarely see the other side of it. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the stigma. Maybe it's, a lot of us are people that are anonymous. But there's a lot of us out there that are recovering. A little bit about me. I was thinking about this earlier because I'm in my semi truck right now. So I drove from East St. Louis. I'm up in Marysville because I'm shutting down. I'm going home this weekend. But I planned my day so I could be sitting still and have signal for this.
That means a lot, Scott.
Well, I was thinking about it. It's like I don't remember the last time I got high. I do remember the last time I took a bunch of pills so that I didn't feel sick. And I know the first day I woke up and went to bed without doing that was July 31st of 2009. So I just recently got to celebrate 11 years in long-term recovery. 11 years.
Incredible.
And I'm the guy that I'm the, steal your stuff and help you look for it addict. Yeah. I was rock bottom. I had prescriptions with 4 or 5 different doctors. It was the wild west of pain pills. And it was I was hopeless. I was certain that I was never going to get clean or stay clean, that nothing was going to work for me. But I also knew that there were communities of people that were successful, and what worked for me was to try and emulate them, to try and surround myself with them, to stay away from the people that were getting high, the people that were drinking. It's like the cliche that if you hang out at a bartender long enough, you're going to end up with a haircut. For me, I even with 1 year clean, I don't hang out with people that are drinking and drugging. Right. It's kind of a cool thing that for the people that are out there that are struggling, it's like you can get to a point where the thought of getting high pops in your head, and the obsession doesn't come after that. I'm always going to be an addict. I'm going to be an addict till the day I die. I had a conversation with someone recently, and they were like, "Oh, so you used to be an addict?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm an addict right now. I just don't do drugs anymore."
Right.
And trying to recover in a pandemic, it's not easy. To me, one of the coolest things that came out of this, especially for someone that does what I do for a living, are the Zoom meetings. It's I found recovery at 12-step meetings. I found recovery through the steps. They worked 11 years ago. They work today, and that's what worked for me, combined with abstinence. And now we've got these Zoom meetings. We're starting to get the in-person meetings are starting to open back up. So it's getting a little bit easier. But definitely, I like to tell people that if you're breathing, you still have a chance. If you're on this side of the dirt, you still have a chance. And that's coming from someone that didn't think he'd be here, 11 years later. I was never supposed to be 41 years old. Have a career. I have my awesome co-pilot who's sleeping in her bed right here, my little beagle.
Nice.
She it's a journey that's not always easy, but it's always worth it. I came to the realization that drinking and getting high offered me all the good times it was ever going to offer me. There was nothing good that was going to come from it. So if you're out there, you're struggling, definitely seek help. It's there's a lot more resources out there today than there was when you and I got clean.
Yes, a lot more.
And it's an awesome thing. There's still not enough, but hey, it's a big step forward. Who'd have thought 11 years ago, 10 years ago, that you could walk into a police station in Macomb County and tell them you have a problem, and they're going to find you a bed. That's the Hope Non-Handcuffs program. I could not talk enough positive things about that. It's you walk into the police station, as long as you don't have a violent crime warrant, they're going to let you handle your addiction side first, and you can get the rest of it straightened out later down the road. I life's good these days. It's I got a nice 4-bedroom house now. I've got, like I said, I've got my dog. I've got a beautiful girlfriend. I've got beautiful children. A couple of them that if I play my cards right, they never have to see me at my worst again. I was the person that, like, that first time I got high, first time I drank, I thought I found what I was looking for. I thought, if I just do this a little bit every day, I'm going to be okay. And then I would find the next one, and then the next one, and then finally I found the opiates, and that was it. That was the one that was like, oh, this is the one I'm looking for. If I just do this a little bit every day, I'm going to be okay. And, it worked great in the beginning. And then when it became a full-time job, just to not be sick the next day. Because like I said, I don't know the last time I got high. I do know the last day I was sick.
That's a good thing not to remember. Like, we want to remember what sports things are going on and, birthdays. It's a good thing to remember, not remember the last time you got high.
Right. Well, there's one of those cliches that if you don't remember your last drink, you haven't had it. So I like to look at it, though, as I remember the very first day that I went without a drink or a drug. And I just did that. I just got through that 24 hours. And then the next day I was like, you know what? Okay, I did that one day. I can do this again. And I just kept doing that 24 hours over and over and over again. And then fast forward to now, while I don't obsess about getting high and I don't obsess about using, and it's not a reflex like it used to be, I still really just worry about today. That's been the key for me, is just to worry about today.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this before I let you go. And I, first off, love the Amazing Spider-Man shirt. I love that you schedule your day around stopping to be able to be on this show. It means a lot to me and everyone watching. What would you say? You told, obviously, a beautiful story there about what you went through, and a lot of similarities that I can relate to. But there's people watching right now. There's people that will watch us on a replay that will say, okay, well, it just seems like it's too much. I want what Scott has. I want what Dan has. I want what anyone else that shares tonight has. But I don't think I could do it. I don't have willpower. I don't have this. I don't have that. What would you say to them? Because to me, all we can do is tell them what's worked for us. To me, it seems like the simplest thing is the best explanation. That it's less about worrying about that and more about just being simple about how you need help, or you admitting that you've got a problem. What do you say to the person that they hear 11 years? I can't have 11 hours. What do you say to that person?
You know what? It starts with, a minute at a time, an hour at a time, a day at a time. You just worry about the here and now, and it starts accumulating. For me, I had to admit that I was done. I had to, for lack of better words, I had to surrender. I had to admit that I had failed as a drug user. And once I had done that, it opened up a lot of pathways for me to recover. If you are breathing, if you have, anybody can recover. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, And for me to be able to sit here with that 11 years, I was that guy with one day before. And I
Right.
still remember that. I still remember being real sick and being real bad on the couch, thinking it was never going to get better. And day by day, it started to. I started to get better, and here I am sitting in front of you.
Beautifully said, my man. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and being a big inspiration for me doing this show tonight. I say that not lightly. I mean, I know that you're being humble about it, but you reached out to me immediately when I mentioned. So I can't remember exactly what I mentioned, or maybe throw it out there or something. You like that within 40 minutes or 20 minutes reached out, Scott, and that's yeoman's work, because it's all about the real people. I'm not saying I'm not a real person, but I'm a broadcaster, so some look at me maybe in a different way. It's about people like you that just want to help others, because you were able to do that yourself too. And I think that's a very important thing, Scott, and you inspired a lot of people, including myself, tonight.
Well, I appreciate that, buddy. And if you we had talked in Messenger about like hitting a meeting, getting some sushi. I'm gonna hold you to that.
I'm in. I'm in. Sushi on me. The dog bark on you. Deal?
Right, that sounds good, buddy. Hey, if you do a show on the comic books or pro wrestling, I'm a huge sports fan too. Obviously, that's where I listen to you. Let me know. I'm down.
100%. Scott, thanks so much. Drive safe. What's the dog's name? Can we see a little video of the dog?
Yeah, her name is Honey.
The Regal Beagle.
Can you see her?
Oh, what a cute. What's the name? What's its name?
Her name is Honey. She's a we estimate she's between 5 and 7 years old. She's actually a recovering animal. They found her in a meth lab. Wow. And the owners were addicts that were breeding her for puppies and selling her puppies. And I recently, one last thing I can share about is you can stay clean through everything. I was in a horrible truck fire this summer. My semi burnt to the ground. I lost everything in it. And I escaped with a broken hand and the shirt on my back. And then on the car ride home from Arkansas, I found her online. And I made a decision. I'm like, I'm 41. I've never had my own dog. I can have dogs at my house. I'm going to go get her. And yeah, she's a dog in long-term recovery. So
I love it. We're all recovering in some way, right?
Right, buddy.
Hey, Scott, thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you. We'll definitely do that sushi date. And you know what? Yeah, I'm a big comic book movie guy too. When movies come back, I do have some access to press screenings, so we'll do some stuff there too.
That sounds good, buddy.
All right. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
All right, you got it. That's great stuff from Scott. And you can see on the screen right there, AA.org. The websites and the apps have gotten incredible. You can download these apps on your phone now. And then literally, if you just open the app, it shows you the closest meeting for AA, for NA, gives you all the numbers you need. So please use the resources, AA.org, NA.org. Reach out to a parent or friend. You're not alone. That's one of the most important things I can say tonight. All right, well, speaking of someone that can really speak to that, let's go to one of my new great friends, my man Jordan Spector. Now, you said it to me yesterday because you're obviously a humble guy yourself. You're like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm living in Newport Beach. I can't complain. So we don't all have it as good as you, but you are doing so much to help others. Before we get into what you're doing now, can you give a little background on your story and then kind of lead into you being the CMO of Pace Recovery Center and Recovery or Rising Roads Recovery, which is incredible, Jordan. But let everyone know kind of how you got there. And I'm very jealous you're in California right now.
Thank you. I was in so many good messages and powerful messages were shared tonight. And, I want to, thank everyone for coming on, and, my condolences on the passing of your friend. Suicide touches us all. And, I had a cousin who took his own life last year, and it's just, I really think what you're doing here is amazing, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. And I think if I'm pretty sure you can tell my exact story. When you were starting your story and I was like, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I had a good family, good parents. I grew up, getting anything I could have ever wanted. From the outside looking in, everything was normal. And I think for me, I was the hyper kid as well at a certain point. But I think from the very beginning, I came out just feeling different. I think when I was growing up, I felt apart from rather than a part of. And, when I talked to my friends in high school and back in the day, they were like, well, we didn't notice anything, but internally I always felt disconnected. And, there's a good saying, the opposite of addiction is connection. And so I think for the majority of, my life, I just felt disconnected from my fellows. So I felt like people didn't like me. I felt like, when I would enter the room, like the music would stop, just these feelings of just inferiority. But also being an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I really like that saying. But, I think, generally growing up, it was a great upbringing, but I was very sheltered and my parents were watching, and, I don't think they ever did anything wrong, but just growing up where I did in Seattle, definitely there was a lot of sheltering. And so my story really, and I'm going to do an abridged version, really took off when I went to college in the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. It was like, I got rushed to a fraternity, before I landed. And so, within the first 5 days, being at USC, I was rushed to the, fraternity. And you got to imagine, at that time, it was like the height of USC football. I think we beat Michigan twice in 2 Rose Bowls that I was at.
Let's not
I don't
go
know if you
there.
remember that.
Let's not go there.
No, but I mean, it was a very fun time, to be at school. And so from the very beginning, it was like all of a sudden I had a group of 70 of my closest friends,
Right.
and it was centered around drinking, and, that was the connection I was looking for. And I heard someone share earlier, you were just looking, when you first used drugs, that was it. And I think something that really spoke to me is, I think that all of us go through life looking for a spiritual connection, a spiritual experience. And I think for me, my spiritual experience in the beginning was, using drugs and drinking, or using other forms of drugs and gambling or video games or whatever it is. I was looking for that spiritual experience. And I think, that is what I think we're all looking for. And some of us, kind of get hooked into drugs and alcohol. And for me, that is what took off at USC. I somehow graduated, but it really didn't get bad until I, got out of school, and, aimless, rudderless. I was completely self-absorbed of doing and getting jobs and doing things that I thought others would respect me more for. I didn't do anything for myself because I had no sense of self. I had no self-esteem, all of those things, as an addict, it's like, you have it's a thinking problem. It's not a drinking problem. You hear that all the time. And I think that for a lot of us, that makes, that rings true because we're searching for, something that's going to make us feel better. And I guess eventually, after lots of jobs, being fired, quitting, geographical changes, going here, looking for, if I go back to LA, the weather's nice, the girls are beautiful, I'm going to be happy. Or if I hate being in LA, I'm going to go back to Seattle with my family, I'm going to be happy there. Nothing was making me happy. My dad always says, wherever you go, there you are. And I was like the perfect example of that. And I think it was a God shot, whatever it is. My drug dealer in Seattle ended up, going on vacation. I didn't know that drug dealers did that, but apparently he used all my money.
All that money they're making.
And went on vacation. And I remember very specifically because I was feeling dope sick on a Sunday of a Seahawks game. And if you know me, I'm not the type of guy who's going to miss a Seahawks game. Right. And I think I told my dad, I was feeling sick, and, that was already a red flag. And at that point, tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt, no job, just coming off the drugs. I had really nothing else to do. And I asked for help. And, I was lucky in that sense. And one of the things I want to explain in my message, and because I work in the industry, is there's a common belief that addicts cannot find help until they've hit rock bottom. And I don't believe that's the case. There are plenty of, things that you can do, interventions that you can do to separate somebody physically from that drug. And I think that that's what, that's how it started for me. Is I ended up in treatment, got kicked out of treatment for not following the rules, which I didn't like any rules. They didn't apply to me. got sent to Colorado to go to treatment, an all men's program, got kicked out of there after a month and a half for using drugs, which is apparently frowned upon in a treatment center. And I think that that's where I had my moment, because I felt different from everyone there, different from my fellows, and I couldn't get past the third step. I'm a Jewish guy, and what's this God program? And
Right.
and there was a lot of stuff going, and I hear that all the time. I won't do this God program. Like, what else do you have? And it's all about going from seeing the differences to seeing the commonalities. And so I remember that night, I thought to myself, maybe I should tell the truth that I used. They already kicked out the two other guys. They don't know that I did it. They're going to throw me a parade. Like, here's this very honest mensch who's going to tell on himself. And I told them myself, they were like, that's great, you have a chance. And they kicked me out. And I think that was the moment for me where I was like, this is, I didn't have a phone. I'm like basically homeless in Colorado somewhere. I called my dad. He just was like, I don't even understand what you're telling me. And he was just going to get rid of me. And I think at that moment I knew, okay, they want me to believe in a God, I'll believe in my God. And I started hitting the program really hard. And I think everything changed there for me. And fast forward, and I'm leaving a lot out, but fast forward, I'm, November 26th, I'll have 9 years, which is just unbelievable thinking back on it. I have a fiance, which is, looking back on it, it was, I was never getting married. It's like, not only, how was I going to find a girl, but how was I going to find a girl that wanted to be with me? It was like, it was just like, and I think what's even funnier about that is my one thing when I was in treatment was like, I'm going to drink at my wedding. Like, I don't know how people don't drink at their wedding.
I said the same thing, Jordan. I said the same. You know
exactly.
what? I'll drink at my wedding, but everything else fine.
Yeah. But now that I'm approaching that, COVID willing, unless it might be on your task force radio show if you want to stream it.
I'm ready. I'll do it for you. I'll do it for free. Normally I charge $5,000.
Are you a rabbi?
Yeah, I studied online for a minute. My mom, she always wanted me to be a rabbi, so I guess I can pretend to be one.
And so that doesn't even cross my mind anymore. And I think what happened was, day after day after day, what you do is you just hope that, that miracle happens. And what I did was I found this community that brought me in. We played softball, we went to meetings, we watched sports, and I think, when I got to a year, I said, well, this is not that bad. I'm happy. I'm working at a grocery store, scrubbing toilets and, but it wasn't that bad. And so I just kept going and going. And now 9 years later, I just graduated my MBA in healthcare administration, and I'm working in the field. It's just like, I can't, I'd rather chop my own leg off than, take another drink or a drug. That's how important it is for me. And that's, I wouldn't be here without that. And I think the previous, somebody was saying like, I could go through, the worst time and not drink. And I think I've proven that when Russell Wilson threw his interception at the 1 yard line. And I was at that game, and I remember waking up the next day and I was like, all right.
Hey, Jordan, I'm not your sober like you're about to be. Try being a Lions fan. I've had at least 25 moments in my 9 years of sobriety where I easily could have gone back and completely relapsed. If we are going to do it for that, we're not doing it.
Exactly. So anyways, here I am, and, live, just gratitude all the time. And, and I guess that's how I got here. And, I think, it's important for me to share my message like everyone else, just, knowing, that if you are struggling, there's help, of course, but B, if you have somebody you think is struggling, there's professional help that their job is to go in and literally remove somebody from what they're doing. And, and that can be for mental health, and that can be for substance use.
Well, yeah. and beautiful. I know it's tough because we have so many people that are talking tonight, but you did a great job of telling that story. I know you left some stuff out like I did as well. But I wanted to ask you about this because, you are now the Chief Marketing Officer of Pace Recovery Center. I want to throw up, this is how cool the software is, Jordan. I'm going to throw the website up right now. And this is out, of course. There's people that might want to call that number right now and get involved. It doesn't matter if it's PACE or any rehab, get involved if you need help. And there's all the information. What is it? PaceRecoveryCenter.com.
Yeah.
And Jordan, talk about that experience to go from where you were to being the chief marketing officer of a very well-respected recovery center. And I don't want to forget Rising Road for the women, for the female side.
Thank you.
That's pretty incredible, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jake was talking about, thank you. And it's, for me, this was like what I was desperate for before I got sober. I wanted to, I wanted something I could be a part of. I wanted something, I wanted to work in a field, that didn't feel like working. And so, really who would have thought that, my darkest hour, my darkest days, would lead to this. And it's like, people talk about failure and pushing past failure. And, for me, it was just like, I've always wanted to be in a field like this. There's it's like high intensity. So, getting calls at all hours of the day, talking to people, just like there's a lot going on and it's very stimulating. And I need to be in a fast-paced environment. And I like selling things. But before I would sell, branded shirts or pens or like software.
People always told me I'd be a great used car salesman. That was my thing.
And you want to be my latex salesman. And so I got, I was able to start working for the program that I went through, and they just put me out on the road and, talk about what we did. And, I ended up really growing that business to a point where it's like, we had 2 locations, and we were in San Francisco to help them start the second location. Just got a lot of experience doing everything in the field, making new connections, and it was helping, young adult men stay sober. And that was like what we did, because that's my story. And so, eventually I just, I kept doing that and just loving what I did. And I get to talk to all these guys when, I just tell them it's really not that bad, and so like I really, and it's amazing when you keep a job. I used to think that my resume was supposed to have like 20 different jobs on, 7 pages over the course of 5 years. It's amazing when you can keep a job long enough where good things start to happen. You stay sober, you work hard, you pick up the phone when you need to answer it. And, eventually I got back into school, which is another amazing thing. Is when I first got brought home after I was struggling, I was, my dad's like, what do you want to do? I want to go to business school. So we got, my prescription of Adderall and Xanax, and then went and picked up like, the GMAT for dummies. And so, that obviously didn't work, but getting to the point where I could actually sit in school, not on stimulants, and study and learn things and show up and do well, gets me to the point where you get an MBA and you start working administratively with a program. And I love what I do. And I love, what we do, because you see these guys and women, they come in and they leave, totally different. And we see the feedback from parents saying, "You saved my son's life." And of course there are the unfortunate ones, and those serve as, great, they carry the most powerful message of all, that I got to get myself to a seat. And I know people love the Zoom meetings, but I can't imagine what it's like getting sober without in-person meetings, where you have to walk in there, and it's a humbling of the ego, this is disease of the ego. And you have to sit your butt in these uncomfortable chairs. And, and so, I really think that, I'm praying that comes back, because it's so important for somebody struggling. But, it's, I feel super blessed and fortunate to do what I do.
No, and it's amazing work you're doing, and I'm grateful for you to share that. And a couple of things before I let you go, and I'm grateful to know you now. And we got introduced by our good friend Jamie Feldman, and then our good friend Marv Sonny. We have all these connections. And by the way, I will be taking you to a Seahawks Lions game next time there's fans, because we will beat you. It'll be very emotional, but we'll be there for each other. Okay.
Well, was that with or without Quandre Diggs? That's all I wanted.
Let's not go there. But I wanted to ask you this, as I've asked some others, and you obviously on a professional side can speak to this. There's people watching right now. There's people that will watch this on replay that are in similar situations like you and I were 9+ years ago. For me, not just 9 years ago, but also 13 years ago and 15 years ago, that know they've got a problem. And some obviously might not be ready to admit that. But let's say just for this question, they know they've got a problem, but they don't know what it's going to take that first step. And I mentioned for me, I had called my uncle, shared with another human being, and it kind of, rolled down the hill from there. What do you say to someone watching right now? Maybe they're embarrassed. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they don't think they have anyone to reach out to. What can you tell them right now to do, or at least what you would do that worked for you? Because that's all we can do is tell it work for us. Because I know there's people that want that help, but might not know how to get that help.
Right. I mean, that's a really good question. It's like the 3,000-pound phone. It's like, why can't you pick that up? I think the way I would go with this, is that, I think a lot of people that come in, the thing they're most scared about is like that detoxification.
Right.
A lot of times in that very initial stage. And am I going to go brain dead? Am I going to be able to get, it's like this, what's going to happen? And I think what I would say is that, there are ways and safe and comfortable. Like if you're sitting at home right now and you feel like you want to get off, but you can't stop using, or you don't, there are places that, will make you feel comfortable, safely get you off the medication, the drugs, whatever you're on. And, once you get that a little bit of clarity, there are other places, and you can go back to AA. They always say, treatment is a really expensive way to learn. AA is free, which is true, but it's all about getting yourself away from that last drink and drug physically. And I think that that's the most powerful thing you can do, is realize that it's not that scary to go in there. Nobody's going to be talking about you. It's like you're always the last person in the room to know you have a problem, it's not as bad as you think. And that's what I would like to share, because it's like, you go in there, they can get you off everything, and then hopefully, you can start hearing the message. So
Jordan,
that's what I would share. Yeah.
Can't thank you enough. I'm grateful to know you now. We'll definitely do this again in the future. We'll get to that Seahawks Lions game, but thank you for what you do, sharing that story of where you were to where you are now, and now being the CMO of Pace Recovery and all the great things you're doing to save people's lives there. And of course, rising roads as well for the women. Thank you for what you're doing. And I'm grateful to know you now.
We could also go to a Kraken's Red Wings game. So
yeah, I don't know how I feel about I love the name the Kraken, but I don't know how I feel about a Seattle NHL team. I think you still should have the Sonics, but the Kraken?
Well, we're going to throw sockeye salmon onto the ice after a hat trick.
Then I'm going to throw an octopus at you.
Okay, good.
Jordan, stay safe. Thank you so much. Very grateful to have you on. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, great stuff from the man, Jordan Spector there. And let's go to another one of the greats, a guy that's been very excited to be involved in the show, my man, Jamie Ward. Jamie, thanks for being patient, as everyone else is as well. And I know you've got a story to tell. First off, welcome in. Thanks for being involved. And I know you've been very excited about being involved tonight.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate you having this platform for us to talk about recovery. I was reminded tonight about how I got clean on March 9th, 2020 this time. I've also been in and out of the program. My first time in the program was in 1987. I went back out and I came back in 97. I went back out again, proved that nothing really changed, and came back again in 2005. And this time around, I realized I was going back through some Facebook messages today, and I talked to you the day before I got into recovery this time.
Wow.
You really gave me some good encouragement. It really helped me take that step to actually get in. I wanted to talk about a couple of things, because Jordan mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. For me, I had a week's worth of face-to-face meetings before I got sick, and then I got quarantined before the actual state got shut down here in Michigan. So I was looking for meetings, trying to find meetings, and for me, I chased meetings as hard as I chased my drugs back in the day. The Zoom platform really saved my life through quarantine. I was able to go to 3-4 meetings a day for the first 90 days, even more after that, keep going. It helped me stay connected. It helped me talk to people in recovery and keep recovery foremost in my mind. Anytime I had a problem, I could just log in and find a Zoom meeting, and there it was. I do understand how some people in recovery miss the face-to-face meetings, the hugs, the welcome. I remember my first meeting back this time. It was very important to me when I walked in the door, and it was hard, man. sitting in the great room at an Alamo club, and I could not get myself to go in there. And I got up and walked out, and there was a guy there, and he was coming out of the room where the meeting was going on. And I said, "Are you going back in that room?" And he said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "Well, I'm coming back off a road trip, and I'm kind of scared." And he put his arm around me. He said, "Welcome home." And he brought me into the room. And I sat down, and I felt like I was home. I felt like I was home. I've heard a lot of people tonight mention about how in their addiction, feeling out of place, feeling like they weren't lovable, feeling like they weren't loved or welcome anywhere or didn't belong. And every time I've been in recovery, that's where I belonged. That's where I felt like I was home. For me, I bet my life on Narcotics Anonymous. It's saved my life. I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be able to share with you today. You know, I'm very grateful to say that on September 9th, I'll have 6 months recovery this time.
It's incredible. It's incredible, Jamie.
Thank you. It's been a tough journey because, you know, I've gone through a lot. I came into this in recovery this time in a relationship. What at the time looked like the end of a relationship was what the catalyst was to make me realize, you know, I'm going to be 50 years old this year, and I've wasted a lot of time in my life. And I had to realize that all the things that I did in my life, they don't define who I am. They're just what I did. What defines me is I want to live today. I don't want to live that way. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that asshole. I've heard a few people say around meetings, and I believe it too, you know, today I just want to be a little less of an asshole today than I was yesterday. I'll be happy with that, you know. I mean, just being clean, being happy, gratitude, you know. There's been days where I felt out of sorts and I didn't realize what was going on. It was because I didn't have chaos going on in my life. I didn't have drama going on in my life, man. You know, I'm clean. I have a great sponsor in the program, and Narcotics Anonymous gives me freedom. I have the freedom to choose today. I don't have to feel like I'm locked in this way of life that there seems like there's no way out. You know, I've heard people today talk about how anybody can recover, and anybody can recover. All you got to do is be willing to ask for help. It's really simple. In the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous, it says the first step is to stop using. It doesn't say anything specific. It just said the first step is to stop using. That sometimes is the hardest thing, but once you do that, you realize all these things that the recovery has to offer. Scott was talking about all the things that he's gotten back in recovery. Jordan was talking about all the things that he's gotten back in recovery. You know, I have a job that I've worked at for a long time, and in recovery, my boss approached me and said, you know, I'm really proud of what you're doing. I want you to run the company now. So I went from a laborer 23 years ago in active addiction to inactive recovery, and now I run a company. I mean, how cool is that? How cool is that? And
it doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's every day I wake up, I try to figure out 3 things that I'm grateful for. And a lot of times what it comes down to is simply, I'm clean today. I'm alive today. I have a roof over my head, and I have people that love me. And for me, learning to believe that I am lovable, that I am okay, that there's really nothing wrong with me. You know, I have a disease. I'm not morally deficient. I have a disease. And I can learn to control that. Narcotics Anonymous is how I do that. You know, it's been tough throughout this 6 months. I won't say it's been easy, but I'm never alone. You know, Narcotics Anonymous has the abbreviation of NA, never alone, not again. And that is huge. That is huge for anybody in recovery. You have to realize you're not alone. There are other people out there who are willing to help you. I've heard so many similarities to my story, to what I went through in my active addiction and what I've gone through in my recovery all the different times, that it just blows my mind how similar we are. Jordan talked about, instead of looking at the differences, finding the commonalities.
Yeah.
That's huge. That is really huge. I mean, there are so many people I hear on a regular basis. You know, I've been fortunate enough to go to Zoom meetings, to go to NA meetings on Zoom in like 11 different countries around the world. And what I realized was that addiction doesn't know any boundaries. It doesn't know countries. It doesn't know anything. Addiction is addiction no matter where the hell you go. You just got to be willing to take that first step. And that first step is to say, I've had enough. I don't want to live this way anymore. And there are people out there like me, like people in this room, that'll welcome you and will help you. You know, I've had phone calls at 3:30 in the morning with friends that, you know, man, I'm really struggling. And I'll stay up with them until, you know, whatever, until I can either get them into a meeting or get them to a place where they're strong enough to say, okay, you know, enough. I've had enough. For me, my bottom was my mother being in the hospital before I got into recovery to this time. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, the woman who turned out to be one of my best friends and still is one of my best friends, telling me that she didn't want to be with me anymore because of my personality. And the first thing I remembered was that I learned in NA a long time ago that NA talks about what we needed was a total personality change. We needed to change everything, the people, the places, the things, everything about us. And it sounds daunting at first, but it's not. It's actually really easy. You just keep it simple. One day at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time. You can do this. Anybody can recover. The 12th step of Narcotics Anonymous states that having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carry the message to the addict who still suffers. And they also say that I can only keep what I have by giving it away. So Dan, for me, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, giving me the platform to be able to share this message of hope and freedom. And I hope I have. I hope I've given people out there that might be struggling a little bit of hope, just a little bit, because that's all you need. I'm going to reference Scott again. He talked about as long as you're on this side of the dirt, man, you got a chance. You got a chance. You got a chance. NA gives us freedom. NA gives us a choice today on how I want to live. I really appreciate you giving me the chance for this, man. And then I want to say again, it meant a hell of a lot to me the day before I got into recovery to reach out and talk to you. I've heard you talk about your story on the radio before, and it was one of the first people I thought, man, I'm going to reach out to this guy and hope and pray that he's going to have something to say to me. And you told me about the AA app, and I ended up finding out there was a Blue Jeans app when we first started, and I was one of the people that started the Zoom meetings in the Washtenaw County area way back when. We had a meeting every night at 6 o'clock. And like I said, for me, quarantine was like being in rehab without having to go to rehab, without having to pay the huge insurance bills. Exactly. I could rehab in my own house with my cat, with whatever I had. I felt comfortable in being home. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't really do anything. So I really didn't have that temptation. At this point in my recovery, there are moments when I think about getting high again, but it's really easy nowadays to go, no, that's not the choice I choose to make today. I choose not to. I don't want to be that guy anymore. Somebody early in my recovery asked me at one of my first meetings this time, what do I want from my recovery? And it was an easy answer for me. I want to be a better version of me, whoever that is. And I'm looking forward to finding that out. So really, thanks for giving us the platform tonight, man. Love
Jamie,
you,
I set the over-under 3 times on Friday night, but you just put me over. So thank you for that. But I want to thank you again because, like I was saying earlier, it's people like you that I've been able to help, and I know you know this. You don't have to thank me, but I appreciate that because it's people like you that keep me sober, but it's people like you that by me being able to do this and allow you to talk and share your story, you're helping others. And I hope you understand the power that you have and that you're giving a lot of people a lot of inspiration right now, Jamie. So keep it going, and I'm very grateful to know you.
Damn it, Dan. I wasn't going to cry until you started saying something, man. Now I'm going to start crying. One of the joys in my recovery now is being able to cry just simply for being grateful, and not from pain, and not from sorrow, and not from sadness. Just being grateful. Just being grateful, man. That's an incredible gift. Thanks for everything, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my honor, Jamie. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to do this again and have you on again.
Yep, appreciate it.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, Jamie. And before I go to my best friend Brad Monash, MD, and he's so not like that. He's so humble, but just hearing from all of you tonight, and I'm going to get to obviously everyone else. I can't thank all of you enough because you've all brought up the same word that I try to say as much as I can. If you've heard me on 97.1 or you've seen these shows, these task force shows I started to into quarantine, you've heard me say gratitude. And I know in my life, and like I said, all I can tell you is what worked for me. Jordan said what worked for him. Scott said what worked for him. Jamie said what worked for him. We're going to hear from Brandon. We're going to hear from Steve. We're going to hear from Tim, who's helping people in his own way, and my friend Max. All I can do is tell you what's worked for us, but it's all about gratitude. Because if you don't live your life with gratitude and understand whether it's waking up, being on the other side of the dirt, as you said, Jamie, that Scott had said earlier, it makes it so much more difficult to understand where you're at. And I know that I was taught this, and it was a tough journey for me at my boarding school in California. It was a very intense, therapeutic, emotional growth boarding school, but it taught me to love myself again. And I mentioned I had insecurities, which led, aside from the genetic disposition to addiction and drugs or addiction itself, it led to that. My insecurities. I want everyone to love me, everyone to like me. And that's where drugs kind of fill that void for me. And other addictions have for other people. But gratitude, they taught me about gratitude there at the Cascade School. And I learned a lot about that in rehab as well. And I think that if you live your life from gratitude, it just makes all these other things so much easier. Like I said, I am grateful I'm an addict. I know to some that maybe have not been in recovery or don't have that issue that are watching to support a friend or showing this to a family member, whatever it is, they might say, well, why would he say he's grateful to be an addict? And I'll say this again if you're just joining the show. I'm grateful to be an addict because it makes up all the best parts of me as well. That you can't have one without the other. Yes, it sucks that I went through heroin abuse and cocaine abuse and all that stuff that living out of eating out of dumpsters in Atlanta, my parents having to save me from being homeless, different situations that suck that many people can relate to. But it's knowing that I'm grateful to be who I am, all parts of it that have gotten me to where I'm at right now, to be able to in such an amazing and humble way host this show and let you tell your story. So thank you for that, Jamie, and thank you for all of you. And speaking of the man, the myth, the legend, let's go to a guy that needs no introduction because he's just that great. Someone that I've known, Brad, what was it, 6th grade? You always tell me you didn't invite me to your bar mitzvah. So, what was that all about? But I've known you for 30 years, and there's no more pure, altruistic human being. You won't even kill an insect than you. You've always been there for me. And I wanted, before we get into anything, I want to tell you how much I love you. But I wanted to have you on because you've always been so supportive of my journey and struggle into triumph. But also, you've seen a lot of this firsthand. You've worked, in hospitals for a long time now. And I wanted to give you a chance to give your respect about that.
Well, thank you so much, Danny. And
Is that the beautiful Addie, by the way, behind you?
There's Addie. Yeah. And there's Revan.
Revan and Addie are in there. Where's Vicky? And Vicky! I love you.
I love you, Danny.
The most beautiful family ever. I'm sorry, Brad, I didn't interrupt you.
Vicky's
amazing.
Not at all. Just everyone's so proud of you and just have so much. Talk about gratitude. The gratitude that I have for you right now is overwhelming to see the lives that you touch. The inspiration that you've had for so many people. It's incredible because you've been in the greatest depths and you've overcome through gratitude, through just your unbelievable heart, the love that you have for the world around you. It's incredible to watch where you're at today and to see the impact that you've had on so many lives. It's extraordinary. So I'm thankful for you in this moment, and thank you.
Now I'm over the 4 times crying about, so now we're over 4. Thank you, Brad.
And it's, so I'm a physician. I do hospital medicine, so I take care of folks that are admitted to the hospital, both adults and pediatrics. So I'm not an addiction specialist. I do care for many people hospitalized, people who inject drugs, people who use drugs. The first thing I teach I do a lot of teaching. I work at a UCSF medical center in San Francisco, and I do a lot of teaching of medical students and residents. And the first thing I teach people is to use the appropriate language. We don't call people addicts. It's drug abusers, right? These are people who inject drugs. It's the person first. It's person first language. And so recognizing the humans behind all of your stories is the number one thing that I teach my trainees in the medical field. And we have so much respect for the adversity people overcome. Unfortunately, I've been in and out of this episode and was able to hear some of the first just compelling stories. Was it Jake that was one of the first people that spoke? And it was incredible to hear him. And I've heard a few people now talk about this stigma, and we have to annihilate the stigma. I mean, I have Crohn's disease, which is an inflammatory bowel disease of my involving my intestines, and I can go anywhere and talk about it. There's nothing stigmatizing about that, and there's no reason why there should be anything stigmatizing about mental health issues. And so I love the open dialogue, the courage people have to come out and speak about their own struggles. And the more people do this, the more people normalize it, the less people will be suffering in silence. And so I know this has been a theme of this episode, but I just want to echo and emphasize the importance of that and that folks don't suffer in silence, but they come out, they seek help, and also speak out, because Danny, by you speaking out with about your history, you have encouraged, inspired so many people, and I know have saved lives in doing so. So that would be, I think, one of my first take homes is just let's destigmatize and let's talk. I think the next piece of kind of thoughts I have in thinking about healing and recovery, and this is not my area of expertise, but I tend to think of 3 different domains, and I think about the intrapersonal, the interpersonal, and the structural. It's kind of the way I've been thinking about anti-racism today, in ways we need to address the epidemic of racism that our world and country are encountering. But the same goes for sort of mental health, and thinking about what are the intrapersonal things? What are the things that I can do? How do I practice gratitude? How do I practice healing? Do I go to NA, AA? Do I need therapy, intensive therapy, pharmacotherapy for folks who have opioid use disorder? There are life-saving medications out there. Buprenorphine is an incredible medication that saves lives. And so there's tons and tons of ways for people to do the intrapersonal aspect of getting help. Then there's the interpersonal. Those are the relationships. That's what I keep hearing people echoing in this call talk about as well. The relationships people have, and find support. And I know we talk a lot about people's, places, and things with alcohol, with AA, and avoiding those things. But having confidants, having people you can trust, that you can be vulnerable in front of, that you can talk openly to, and people that can be on the journey with you and support you and not give up on you, because we know with addiction, relapse is part of the journey. And we anticipate in the medical field that folks will relapse a number of times before they ultimately are able to sort of maintain abstinence, what have you. So having support, finding it, whether it's a coach, a sponsor, a best friend, a partner, a spouse, find those interpersonal connections that will help to support you through. And then I've spoken a little bit to some of the structural lifestyle changes. And there's ways to sort of put yourself in positions that can set you up for success, whether that's getting out of a certain community, whether that is enrolling in a program that will provide the interpersonal healing. And so I would think about those three levels, and what are you doing on all 3 levels: intrapersonal, interpersonal, and structural.
There's a reason that you went to Penn Med and are considered one of the great human beings in the world, because I don't think you could have explained that any better or in simpler terms. And I think you just helped a lot of people understand that from your, medical doctor point of view. And I want to ask you this, Brad, with your beautiful family in the car that is so obviously lucky to have you, and vice versa. But when because obviously you mentioned you're not an addiction specialist, although you know a ton about this, and that's a very important thing to be knowledgeable as a medical doctor, to see all this stuff. What do you say, as I've asked a lot of people tonight, to the person out there that maybe they haven't accepted they have an issue yet? Maybe they have. But either way, there's something missing, and they want to reach out. And we've obviously given them, I've flashed this across the screen the whole show, all the information for National Alliance of Mental Illness, or the Suicide Prevention Hotline, or AA.org and NA.org. There's obviously great resources. But what if there's someone, like I mentioned for me, that just needed to reach out and needed to talk to another human being? From what you've been able to see and all that great information you just gave, what would you say to that person that's watching right now that knows they want to live a different life? Maybe they're scared, maybe they're anxious, maybe they're embarrassed. What do you say to them? Because you've seen so many of these situations, obviously, that have turned out great and maybe not so great. What would you say to that person?
It's such a great and difficult and challenging question, because everyone's journey is so individual, and it's so much, I think, more powerful to reach an individual and see what that individual needs, because what I'm going to say otherwise is going to sound trite and cliche. But the themes of themes that pop in my mind that can really, really help is, well, first, like, don't give up. Don't give up. 2 would be listen. In your setup for that question, you said, what if there's people who don't think that they need help yet? And I would say, like, listen to your loved ones, listen to people you trust. And if people are recognizing things, then maybe you aren't. And there are, addiction is biologic. It's genetic. There are structural brain changes that happen in the mesolimbic system, which is the pleasure system, as well as in the frontal cortex, which is the decision-making structure. And so, so there, the brain chemistry is not balanced, sort of aligned in folks who are actively struggling with addiction. So I would say, so don't give up. Listen to your friends, listen to people, and recognize that your own judgment might be impaired. And then maybe the third thing I would say is just finding hope. I think, so gratitude is definitely crucial, as is hope. I think when people lose hope for whatever that hope is, hope to live a normal life, hope to live a happy life, hope to find some sense of fulfillment, hope to spend 3 days not under the influence of substances, I would say hope is what will keep a lot of people going within the depths of despair.
Beautifully said, Brad. And those that have not heard me say this before, because I've said this actually, you've called my shows, I've talked about you on air. There's no one greater than you and more pure as a human being that I've ever known. And people like you being alive with all these crazy things we're going through, you and I talk about them a lot. It's people like you that give me hope for this world. So I hope you know that. I know your family knows that. I know our friends, including Rhonda Brown, who's weighing in. I know she knows that. I know Amy Reifler knows that. But it's one of these things where it's people like you that are giving a lot of us hope that things will get better. So thank you for what you do, Brad.
Well, Danny, I said it up front. I can't thank you enough. I love you with the entirety of my being, and you are doing such great work, God's work, for whatever deity folks believe in. You are doing it. Keep up the hope, and for everyone tuning in, listening, whether you're struggling because of a loved one of yours is struggling, whether you're struggling yourself, there's this community out there, and tap into the community, tap into Dan's sort of goodness and inspiration, and don't give up, because the gaping hole that too many people feel for the rest of their lives after having lost loved ones, it's extraordinary. Now, let me just give one shout out, since we're talking about mental health.
Please do.
In a
Detroit, I got 2 quick questions for you.
Yeah, in a Detroit-based show. It's just a shout out to Ryan Beal. I don't know if Ryan Beal is on there, but he lost his brother to suicide and has dedicated his life to the well-being of others, and started a platform called Therapy.live. And they do, he did a lot of crisis counseling for years, and now launched this online platform to increase mental health services availability for everybody. So Therapy.live, and a shout out to local Detroiter, Ryan Beal.
I love it. 2 quick things. 1, here's my mom sending you some love with Chloe, by the way, in that picture. 2, are you on your way to Carl's Jr., Sonic? Are we going to are there Chick-fil-A's in California?
The big one is In-N-Out, although
yes, In-N-Out.
We are not. I took the kids for a swim, so that's why I didn't realize when I flashed the camera back there that there may have been some child nudity happening. That was totally unintentional.
Unintentional.
And
last one for you, Brad.
Please.
I got to give you a chance to let people know what it was like to grow up with me, because they always want to know what I showed the pictures of me as a kid, when I was in much better shape. You're still in great shape. What was it like to grow up with this wacko as a kid?
I mean, spoons. I mean, let me tell you, it was every day was nuts. It was crazy. I mean, I couldn't even believe like what would happen every single day. You never knew where the adventure would take you. It was just total chaos every day.
Chaos. No one does a better Dan Leach than Brad Monash. All due respect to Bill McAllister, Gator, and others. Brad, I love you with all my heart. Vicky, Addie, Revan.
Love you more.
We love you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Brad. And I can't wait to see you soon.
Have a good life.
Have a good life.
I will have a good life. Thank you. You have a great life.
We're so proud of you.
All right. Danny, we're so proud. Love you so much. Thanks for inviting us and letting me.
Thanks for being the best friend a guy can ask for.
I want to watch I hope this is being recorded. I love to see the recording.
Yes. It's recorded. Replays are all over the place.
All right. Thanks, Danny.
All right. Love you. There he is. The positive spots there. Like I said, all due respect to my man Gator and Bill McAllister and a couple others. There's no one that does the Dan Leach better than Brad Monash. It's just, he has had, like, the hospital my dad's a physician, and the hospital used to call when I was a kid, and I would answer the phone, and they would think he was me. So he's an OBGYN. So they would say these, like, sometimes really gross things about what was going on with a certain patient. And I would say, all right, send her to the hospital. And I, like, 3 minutes later, say, all right, I'll go get my dad. But, like, Brad has had 10-minute conversations with people who thought it was me. And he just played it off like it was me. 10-minute conversations. That's how good he is. My sister was saying that impression was hilarious. And we got my old friend Erica Brown weighing in as well. Love all you guys. All right, let's get to my man who's been very patient. It's funny, we have this private chat in the software, and they're all talking to each other. We're talking to each other, and it's very, really powerful and sweet messages during the chat. And someone, I don't know if it was my man Steve or Brandon saying, how can I follow all these great people? Well, you follow them because you're just as good as them, and it's all about going later on, because it's not about who goes first. It's about who cleans it up. That's the cleanup hitter, Steve. You're a cleanup hitter.
Thanks,
You're wearing
Dan.
the Tigers jersey, right? You got some kind of jersey on.
No, this from Tokyo.
Tokyo baseball. But
Yep,
Steve, I wanted to throw this out there before we started with you. You have been very incredibly passionate about being involved in this show. You're an incredibly passionate and beautiful human being. And I just want to thank you because, just so really quick, to pull the curtain behind, I kind of put some feelers out for this show a month or so ago, maybe 2 months, Steve. And I said, anyone that wants to be involved, I would be honored to have you on to tell your story. No pressure. Say whatever you want, as deep as you want to get. And you immediately, like I mentioned, Scott and some others, you immediately reached out and wanted to be involved. And then today you sent me an email. You had all these, you wanted to make sure everything was great. And that just speaks to you and how much you care about being the best you can be, but also helping others. So I applaud you for that. I'm very grateful to have you on, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate you having me on your show. Like you just said, this is a very important topic for me. This is my life we're talking about here, and everyone else's. And that's a big thing as well. Some people don't realize how big of an issue this is. This a life or death issue that we're dealing with here. And there's no room to be scared or to be nervous or anything. I mean, if anybody is watching this, just do it. Just reach out as many times as it takes, because I guarantee you, everyone that spoke tonight tried more times than one to get where they're at today.
I was one of them, Steve.
And so was I. More times than I can count. So with me, the basic, pot, drug usage, growing up through high school, but my issue was opioids. That's where it really got me. It put me down. I did things that I never would have thought I would have ever done. Put me in prison. It killed me. I overdosed and I woke up in the back of an ambulance. And that was the scariest day of my life. I don't think that, I'm a spiritual person, but, I think everything happens for a reason. But I don't know, that day it was just that something happened. June 17, 2017, I was driving, stopped at a red light. Luckily, I didn't crash into anything, but that's what it took for me for this to stick. And like you just mentioned a minute ago, Dan, the gratitude, that's what has gotten me through. Every day I find new things that I'm thankful for. I try not to take things for granted, because that was something that was a character defect of mine that I had to work very hard on. And I mean, just little things like the fact that you reached out for me to do this, and I have an opportunity. What else would I be doing right now? This is way more important to me. And like I said to you personally earlier, if someone is watching this and they don't have that one drink or that one line or whatever the case may be, my whole experience was not in vain. If I can reach one person and help them, then everything I went through was worth it. And if anyone ever wants to talk, and I'm there, I will talk to you. I'm willing to listen. If you just want to talk, I'm willing to give my opinion. Because this is my life. Like I said, this was tough for me. You know, I when I was going through withdrawal, I tried to kill myself, literally. And I had to go to the hospital, and it, I don't know. I'm sorry. It's a tough, Dan.
It's okay.
It's a tough time.
Okay, take your time.
But you know, I just really wanted to hit home that, you know, it's not, no matter how embarrassed you may be, you can still be a great person and be an addict, a recovering addict or recovering alcoholic. You know, I'm not going to start naming people, but you'd be surprised how many people are addicts who are out there living a successful life. Dan Leach, for example, on the radio, 97.1. That's just, you know,
I think Steve might have froze there. Let's see if we can get him back here. We will get Steve back in just a minute. Unfortunately, sometimes the internet doesn't cooperate with us, so we'll get Steve back. But he was obviously telling a very important story, and a story that a lot of us can relate to. So we'll get Steve back and I'll let him finish that. But while we're waiting for that, let's go with another man who's been very patiently waiting, who is someone that, once again, was so passionate about wanting to be involved in this show. And it's my man, Brandon. Brandon, unmute that mic for me. You did a great job of muting it to make sure you were quiet, but you were fine in that online studio. No, but Brandon, and once again, I'm so blown away because I could have had like 15 more people on tonight that were so willing to share their story, but you did it right away. And that's kind of, it wasn't like I was choosing one person over the other, but people reached out right away, and you were one of them. And I think it's very powerful to know there are people like you that I might not know very well personally, but that I really feel connected to because you want to help others like I'm trying to do.
Well, thanks, Dan. That really means a lot to me. And part of the reason was because, you know, when it comes to you, you're not just a sports broadcaster. You're a guy who's been through the ringer. You've been through your own personal hell. And, you know, you came out of it. You know what it takes to help people and stuff like that. So that's why I wanted to do that. And by the way, my condolences about your friend.
Thank you.
Especially your other friend too, Jamie Samuelson. Obviously, I think we can take a moment to reflect on his life and what he meant to all of us. But you know, I share in your pain with the friend of yours that committed suicide, because, as you know, I had a friend who I lost to suicide about 3 years ago. You know, that pain never goes away, but if you remember the good times, you know, you say you're, as Dan, as you know, your Misha Barach's, your prayer for healing in the synagogue, you know, and eventually you get through it. But my story is a little different. I don't have a recovery story because I'm still kind of on the road to recovery, if you will. I'm not an addict, but I do have a mental illness that not a lot of people talk about. People talk about mental illness. They talk about depression. They talk about anxiety. You know, they talk about, you know, suicide. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed as being bipolar. And for those of you who don't know what bipolar is, when you're high, you're really high, and when you're low, you're super low.
Yep.
And you're not in control of your own mind 90% of the time. It's like you wonder at any moment when you're going to snap and, you know, turn into the Incredible Hulk, basically, in terms of how much anger there is in there. But for those that, you know, that are going through this, I mean, there's people out there, you know, that are like you. You're not alone. You know, as you know, Steve Rogers said in Endgame, the world was left to us, guys.
I mean, it's our job to take care of it, and to be able to have this platform to speak tonight, really, really means a lot. And when it comes to bipolar disorder, right now there really is no cure. There's meds that can control it, and
Right.
I'm fortunate that I'm a little more stable than most people who are bipolar. I have my wonderful girlfriend to thank for that, and my therapist, and my family and all that. But there's always that lingering moment where you wonder, when's that moment going to come where I'm just going to snap and that'll be it. So the cure, if you will, is really to admit that you have the problem. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to admit that you have a problem.
Absolutely.
But once you admit that you have the problem, then you can work on finding the solution to that problem. And how I get through it every day, number one, sports. Number two, doing this kind of thing. I mean, I never thought I'd have the ability to come out here and say this, and when Dan, posted this on Facebook, and my first thought was, that's it right there. That's what I want to do, and the stigma's always going to be there, sadly. I mean, we can do what we can to try to erase it, but I don't think it's ever permanently going to go away. But we can help to reduce the stigma just by listening. And as I was telling people in the private chat, yeah, it's wonderful to speak out, but it's also okay to listen. When people come to you, I may not necessarily give the best advice. So anybody that's out there that needs an ear, like I said, I might not give the best advice, but I'll listen. And I think, in a lot of ways, that's more important than even just speaking. But again, I just want to, it's that gratitude that everybody keeps talking about. I'm very thankful for this opportunity. I'm thankful that during the pandemic that I haven't gone completely, insane.
Right. I think we're all feeling that way, right?
Exactly. But, I always tell people, find something that makes you happy and you'll never be sad again. For me, it's sports, even though, I wish I could spend my Sundays, being happy during the fall, but we know how that goes. And, now it's the fact that baseball's back, as weird as it is, without watching with any fans, it's still there. It still makes me happy. But the bottom line is, guys, again, I sometimes you have to hear it 2 or 3 times. There's people there that will listen. There's people, you're not alone in this world. And if there's ever any way I could help, let me know. Dan, thank you. We love you. I love listening to 97.1. It's literally the only station I ever listen to in my car, by the way, is 97.1. I hope that, our paths can cross again once this craziness stops.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for listening, and God bless you all. And
Brandon, thank you. And this is the thing. You said such an important part of what is just so important about this show tonight in many different ways, is that know that people, you're not alone, and that you are there for others, and that if they listen, if there's someone to listen for you, that they won't feel like they're alone. And you obviously understand that, and you sharing that and being willing to do that. This isn't an easy thing. I do this for a living. Most people don't. For you to do this, Brandon, speaks volumes about who you are, where you're on your journey to, and how grateful I am for people like you that are going to help others. And I want the best for you as well. So thank you, Brandon, because this is not an easy thing to do. You're bearing your soul, and I'm so grateful that when I reached out for people to be involved, you were right there wanting to be involved. That says a lot about who you are, Brandon. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Dan. It really means a lot.
And go Tigers. Let's get maybe a little 10-game sandwich run. Maybe the Lions. And Brandon, in all this crazy year of years, Would this be the year the Lions finally did something? Then the season gets canceled. So maybe we're in for some good times.
You know, it's funny. And I used to host a radio show actually on what used to be Sporting News and Yahoo Sports Radio.
Hey, you got that great voice.
Thank you. Now SB Nation Radio. It would always be that the year the apocalypse happens will be the year that the Lions win the Super Bowl. And we are this close to the apocalypse. So I'm not throwing things out there. I'm just saying that, hey, Super Bowl happens, I mean.
It's possible.
Anything can happen on any given Sunday. So, yes. So there's that. But let's say 8-8 is probably realistic this year.
That's kind of par for the course. But Brandon, you're if there was a record for you, it'd be 16-0. Thank you, Brandon, and we'll definitely get together soon. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great stuff there for Brandon. And let's go to my man, another guy who's super excited to be involved in this show. And it just blows me away. It's such a humbling thing that everyone wants to help, try to help others. It's my man, Tim. Tim, what's going on? Thanks for being so patient.
Dan, hey, how you doing, buddy? Hey, I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on the show. I know we don't know each other personally, but
it feels like we do. It sure feels like we do.
Well, we do. When we hooked up on Facebook, I realized following you, there's a lot of like-minded stuff that we have in common, so that's great. And when I saw you post this about recovery and talking about mental illness and addiction, this is right up my alley. I wanted to jump in as quick as possible and try to get into the slot, if you will. And I'm in the last slot, so that's good.
Yeah, but like I said, your cleanup.
You said that twice.
Yeah, you guys are both, hitting the home runs when it matters most.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm grateful, and there's some great stories, a lot of great people, a lot of great recovery, and a lot of great information, and helping folks going through addiction and mental illness. And so I appreciate you letting me share mine and share what we're doing and what I'm doing in helping. So one of the greatest things about coming out of addiction, even for myself, is you want to help people. Everybody wants to help. And because you realize coming through all this in your life and what you've been through, that there are people suffering, because when you feel the pain of these folks and when you're going through that addiction, through that pain, and you recover from it and you're healing from it, you want to reach out to as many people as possible going through this to share with them and help them to walk through this. So let me jump in real quickly. I've said this 100 million times, so to give you a quick overview of my story, and then I'll jump into why we're doing what we're doing, because I'll give you a good background on what's happened. It's a little different, a little unique. So I'm not I wasn't born here in the U.S. So I'm from India. Believe it or not, I'm full-blooded Indian. Used to wear a turban and all that stuff when I was a kid.
I never would have guessed that.
Well,
maybe we say you like cricket, but I never would have guessed.
My name, I go by Tim Suri. My name is Tinny Usmith Singh Suri.
Wow.
So dark, used to have hair, black mustache. Can't see it now. So now people think I'm just American. But anyway, I came here when I was a young kid, when I was 9 years old in '69 from India. And both, haven't seen my both parents because my grandparents were raising us. So we saw them for the first time, my sister and I, after not seeing them for 2 years at 7 years old. Anyway, came here, got settled on the east side of Detroit. My dad was here, my parents, and when you're growing up and you're impressionable, when you're that young, you're learning everything, and emotions and all those things are part of that life. As growing up within those couple of years, you get to realize who your parents are, and my dad wasn't a good guy. And a lot of these people, a lot of you folks out there who shared a lot of the stories of your stories, everybody has their personal tragedy, if you will, of life. And we have ours, and I had mine. And, my dad was very abusive. I was oldest of 3 kids, and was not a nice guy. So really not got to know him well. And then, of course, my mom was very young. And so, they're divorced. I barely knew my parents. And then next, 3 kids and a mom who couldn't speak a word of English, had to find a job. And now we're on welfare. You go through all these hardships in life. And a lot of folks talked about, what they didn't have and what they did have, and what molds you to become who you are, and how even addiction takes over down the road because of your unhappiness. So, when you go through all that stuff, and then and your mom is only 27 years old with 3 kids, who just is going through this ordeal, and now you're in a different country, no family. So we grew through that, and we got through those things, and wasn't easy. And being the oldest wasn't easy. But when you're a mom working 2 jobs trying to raise kids, you're really not there emotionally. So emotions are the biggest thing. I always tell people, one thing I've learned: addiction is the cause of the root of other things that are psychological, mental experiences that we need to heal for that addiction. And you don't realize that till later. But all those things start molding when you have the lack of compassion, love, trust. When you say gratitude, when you're that young or going through life and you've lived that life, you're really not happy about anything because you're searching. And so going through all that, high school, all those things I failed at. Actually, I went through 4 high schools because we moved 4 times. Ended up dropping out in 10th grade because I got held back twice because I failed so many times. And so I didn't go back for a GED. So I'm a 10th grade high school dropout in my life. So now you're roaming the streets trying to find out how you're going to get a job. So I dropped out of high school at 16, never looked back after I left home, but learned how to sleep on the streets, homeless, learn to eat food from places that you don't want to mention, things just to survive. And the first thing is the stigma of being Indian. Everyone's a doctor, an engineer, or somebody professional.
Right.
Not me. So I got the worst of it because I was looked down as like outcast, the guy who just sucked, in life, and was a guy who's the leper of the family that I didn't want to speak about. So that's how I was treated, and that's how I felt. So at different levels, we all feel the different things when you lose that type of trust and love in your family, and everybody has a different level of it. So I've never downplayed that mine's worse than anybody else's. So once you get through all that, and now you're working in a shop, you're trying to make a career, but you think what kind of loser you are. You have no education, you have no purpose in life, and you get through that. And until the 20s, I really got into drugs. I mean, it was introduced to me not when I was young. I was actually never a big partier, but when I hit my 20s, I got introduced to cocaine. Now, being a type A personality, if you can't tell, I speak fast. I'm in sales. So like you, type A. So when I got introduced to cocaine, pot and heroin, stuff like that, I never got into because it was a downer. I needed to be lifted. So, but for me, personality, cocaine. Next thing you know, introduce it, then you get into, you're doing it, just casually in parties and things like that. And then you realize how great it is. Helps you, no matter what it is, what addiction is, it makes you forget and enjoy a different reality in life for that purpose, so for that moment. Next thing you know, went from casual use. Next thing you know, 7 years later, I'm buying 8 balls every weekend, OZs. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yep.
And then it started affecting my life. I used to weigh 238 pounds, used to lift weights when I was young. Next thing you know, 7-8 years later, I'm down to 175, and everything just looks sickly. I didn't really have a career, no life, nothing, no plans. So finally, I was introduced young to religion, to Christianity. I was born a Sikh, so I didn't know Christianity. So I was in and out of that a little bit, but later in life, and Jordan, who spoke earlier from Newport, I appreciate him speaking about something about faith that he mentioned earlier, and because that's part of my conversation too, because I know we speak about a lot of things about recovery, but there is a portion of it that's very important part of our lives, and that's that faith part. But I'll get to that in a second. But when I got into I wasn't really straight. I got jobs, I worked, I tried to excel in my career, but it still affected my personal life. And not until 2002, when I met my wife 2 years prior. Back then I wasn't married, and we were dating. She knew I partied. I did coke, and I told her I would stop. We've been through that. We've been through those stages, all of us. We'll stop. We'll start. We'll stop. Something will trigger it. You're never over it until you're over it, until you put an effort into it. So I got married in 2003 for the first time. I was 40 years old. And my first week home after, or my first 3 days after I got married, I disappeared with an 8-ball for a week. Can you believe that? Nobody could find me. I disappeared
For a week?
For a week. So, in buying coke and depleting my bank account, my wife shut off everything. I was just married. Just got married. I'm just telling you, I mean, it's funny now, but it wasn't back then.
Right,
but
right.
You get married and all that stuff happened. And next thing you know, as hard as we work to scrounge money for the next high and the next run, when someone said, how much effort you put into being sober, you don't realize you work harder trying to get high and finding money when you don't have it than the sobriety part. Sobriety part is also hard. It is tough. But once you get past it, you realize, you're coasting through a lot easier than partying. But what the worst part about being high all the time and partying is when you're not using, how remorseful and degrading you feel about yourself.
Absolutely.
So when you're sitting there and you're crying to God to help you, and why am I living, and you wanted to die, I've been in those situations too, where I've had a gun to my head, and because I was tired of my life. I didn't see any future ahead, and of course I'm preaching to the choir, because a lot of us have gone through that. So when I sit and talk in front of people and help them, they realize that the guy who's sitting in front of them has been there. And that's important, because a lot of people who don't know, they don't know how to communicate to touch those points. But when I was in Brighton Hospital. You guys know that name. I was in Brighton Hospital. And thank God I had insurance, because they wanted $5,000. I went, really? That much money to help people? Wow.
Yeah.
What happened? You can't afford it. So I was lucky. But at that point, I've lost my job. My wife comes in and sees me. She really didn't want to see me after what I did. And she says, I'm going to file for divorce. I just got married a week ago. She wants to file for divorce. And I depleted everything. And she goes, we're about to lose it all because of what you did. And this is where I've hit rock bottom many times in my life. When somebody said about hitting rock bottom, well, I was sitting there and I hit rock bottom. And I realized when I looked around, never been in recovery before, when I looked around and saw the folks who've been there 4, 5, 6 times and had conversations with them during my recovery, I sat there and thought to myself, I said, my gosh, I don't want to go through this 4, 5, 6 times, or even 2. So I laid in bed in my recovery room, and I had the Bible in my hand. I really didn't read it. And I sat down and I said, God, this is what I said. I said, God, I said, please kill me now. I mean, really, I wanted to die because of everything that's happened and where I was in my life. And I know I'm going to sound preachy, but I'm not, because my recovery program that I'm involved with is not really preachy, but it does involve God. So I sit there, and something in my head spoke. I'm thinking that's God, and said that, all right, you're dead. Had no clue what that meant. Not until later. In Romans, it says that in order to be born again in your life, you need to crucify the old and kill the old self. And I didn't realize that till later, that he said, okay, your old self is dead. Now you start new. One thing you don't realize every day, that things that we do to recover and the support that we need, the mechanisms, is not just another human being, but it's also something inside, because that hole that's missing in our life that we need to fill of love, compassion, respect, and worth are not found by people. It's found through things, and faith is very important about that.
Absolutely.
So I got my marriage back. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a career. But I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to fast track it now. So I married, stayed, everything else. We didn't lose anything. I did 90-90, all the recovery programs, NA, AA, went to church, did all that. And there's a difference of what I think and how I feel personally about certain things, and I'll share that in a second. But I think all those recovery programs are very, very important and essential to stay sober. So whatever you've got to do, you've got to call, you got to make that phone call your sponsor, call somebody when you're feeling that down, or any triggers they may cause you to second guess yourself to get in trouble. So that I'm going to say right now. But because of my faith, I went back to church and changed my life and changed and redirected the way what my faith was going to help me, and how God, I'm not saying my faith, how Christ was going to help me, and how he got involved in my life. It's very important because AA is also based upon, in the book of James, is also based biblically, especially part of those 12 steps. And it's very important that each of you and each of us walk those lines, those steps, according to our faith and how God is involved individually, not when somebody tells you something. So that's why the Bible is important to read. But let me just say this. So from the day of 2003 from Brighton Hospital, I'm 57 now. So this is 17 years ago I've been sober. And you'll get a text, not simple. Everything is a process. It's a growth process to recovery. But let me just say this. This is where the amazing part comes in. With no education, nothing in what I've done in my life. Right now I'm the vice president of a big company out of New York. Before that, I was an executive vice president of another company, a vice president before that, and I was a shareholder of another company. All those happened between the ages of 40 to 57 years old. So when people say I'm too old, or I don't have a future, I don't have this, yeah, you do. You just don't know it yet because you can't see through the clouds of the future that's ahead of you in the light of the tunnel because you're clouded. And so those things all help. And let me tell you, faith is very important because like you, Dan, look where you're sitting today behind a radio station. You're up here and be able to do something like this to help folks. So let me tell you what I do. So in order to help, Sundays we go to church. That's great. Mondays I do addiction recovery at our church, and I'm here in Clarkston at Mount Zion. Big church, big programs. And then we also do on Tuesday nights, I go to church and help with emotional stress and anger and those issues that may cause you to trigger to go back and use. So because there's a process of many things, not just stopping using, you have to face your anger, your hurt, your pain. You have to face those things, and they need to be filled with the right things in life. And when people ask, here's a very important question, and everybody asks this about recovery and about themselves. What's my purpose in life? Big question, because I did the same thing. Here's the answer that I found, and I think you may agree with this. Dan, you're a radio host. I'm a vice president of a company. That is not my purpose in life. My purpose is not to be a vice president of a corporation or to work on an assembly line or be a cook or a chef. Those are jobs that pay our bills. The purpose in life is to go help people. It's to do God's work. And when I say God's work, it's not, you're not called to be a minister, but you may be. That's between you and God.
Right.
My purpose in life was to do this, to go out and help people from my experiences, everything that I've learned from addiction, now to go help and direct them so they could also be saved. That is my purpose. So when you find a purpose in life, when you're not sure, well, that's something that you need to find with faith, because God will give you that purpose and the purpose that you enjoy. I love helping people. I know, Dan, you do too. That's why you're doing this. That is your purpose. You're a great radio host, but your purpose in life is to help people. And that's what we do. And that's what's great. And all the folks who are coming to recovery, and the gentleman like Jordan going through his MBA, and now, and because he wants to help people, well, because now we have experience of something that nobody else does, recovery. Yeah. That's how that's our experience. So,
well, Tim, it's so beautifully said by you, and I think that it's such an important thing, because like you said, we've all had these, tremendous issues at times. We've all, gotten through them. Sometimes people fall backwards. But when you can root yourself in gratitude and be able, like you are, which I'm so impressed by and so in awe and grateful for, help others. It's what we need in this world right now. With all the craziness going on, we need to help each other because there's been so much anger and frustration and divisiveness for such a long time. If we can listen, like people have said, if we can be there for each other and help others, boy, there's so many beautiful times ahead, right?
Amazing. Listen, it's, even when there's divisive times, when you bring faith in your life, not only that you're curing your addiction, the process of how you think and process information, how it affects you, that's very important, because a lot of things can come not just through family and friends, because the healing process is not just yourself, it's the people around you that affected you in order to be in that environment. So how do you accept things? And these are things like you're saying, the news, the media, you see stuff happening in COVID, and you're trying to process it, but at the same time, it's affecting you emotionally. And you need to find out, and you need to go to a place. Listen, I can tell you this honestly. I can sit here today. I work from home. I've done remotely since my company's in New York because I'm VP of sales. I do 150 flights a year. Not now. I haven't been on one flight this year. I've been on Zoom call with everybody. So it's driving my wife crazy because I'm at home every day. But the fact is, what keeps us sane is I can actually sit down and that's me personally, shut everything off before I start my day, have a prayer, appreciate everything I have, where I'm at, that I'm alive, because even 17 years later that I've been saved, and by the way, I want to say something else. This is for me, and everyone's in a different place. Since my walk in faith is as strong as for me it is, if you believe in the Bible and you read Christ can heal anyone, I'm healed. So I can tell you that right now. I never looked back, never had a trigger again. And listen, everybody, it's not a place for everybody. It's a journey that everybody takes. And so whatever journey takes you for being better and healthy and sober, that's great. And whatever is at the end of your journey for greatness, you'll be there.
Tim, such beautiful words, such a beautiful message. And like I said, I'm just so humbled and grateful and blown away by people like you that want to be involved in this. The message you had trying to help others, which we need so desperately right now. So I can't thank you enough. Let everyone know again if they maybe want to get involved in the church. You mentioned obviously you're helping people in recovery at your church. What is that church again?
Well, listen, it's Mount Zion. So Mount Zion is very simple. It's a very large church, and it's the only one in Clarkston. And you guys can just call there. You can go to their website as well. It's Mount Zion Clarkston. You'll see it. There's only one there. And then when you go to the community groups, you'll see their recovery program and all that. And you can sign up, and we'll call you. And let me just say this: one of the most important things about I've been to a lot of recovery programs and try to help people. Not all of them. It's to my liking, if you will, to get from point A to help people. But the difference is this: because it's church-based, we're not throwing the Bible at you. Okay? That's not the way I do things.
I know for me, Tim, early on, because I'm Jewish, and I know Jordan brought this up earlier, I didn't I didn't, necessarily relate to certain things, but it's about way more than that. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, we don't do that. Let me explain. I've sat through a lot of those, and I've spoken to the church leaders who lead those things. I said, these people are being trucked in from homeless shelters, right, for the weekly meetings. Some are coming in because they're forced by their wife and their family either to be divorced or be in a program. Some are there just to be recovering. And I said, all you've done is open up the book and read a few verses and say, this is how you should run your life. I said, that's not how I do things. I said, we need to address how they're feeling right there in that spot, what they're going through, what they want to talk about, how can we help them as human beings, and then how does God fit into this? That's a way of doing things. First, get to the human side. Then we'll deal with the spiritual side. So there is a process, and I'm glad I got to share that part, because I don't want people to think they're going to walk in and sing hymns for an hour and do this and do that. No, I'm really, because I've sat there and I see people going and losing them. I'm watching them going, man, it's not worth it. So I want to tell you this. Let me just share one quick thing and I'm done. I went down to a recovery program down in downtown Detroit, really bad neighborhood. In fact, not too far from where I grew up. But I walked in, I pulled in, and this time, God bless me, I pulled in with a Cadillac, I had a $600 suit on because I just left the office and I had to run down there and to help these addicts. So predominantly African Americans and a couple of white people were sitting in the room. And by the way, before everybody gets any tizzy, my best friends are African American. I grew up in the east side of Detroit, so trust me, my language and my vocabulary wasn't like this. Okay, so I walked in, I'm standing there, and it's my turn to talk, and they're all looking at me going, and I said, listen, I said, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about why you're here, and it was a Christian thing. And they're looking at me. One guy goes, son, you're in the wrong place. I go, why? He goes, we saw you pull on a nice Cadillac. You got a $600 suit on, and he goes, and you think you know how we feel? So I said, listen. I started telling him my story. I said, I grew up 4 miles down the street. I said, that's where I went through the whole story, and I told him. They looked at me, and when I told him, I said, remember when you dropped that rock and you ran out, and you're looking through the shag carpet where that rock was, or you're backtracking, trying to find it. You're going in your car, said, I could have dropped one in the seat. I said, remember? And they're all looking at me going, man, he's right. And I said, and then I talked about homelessness. I talked about how no parents and all that. When I was finished, he looked at me and goes, I said, you know why I'm here? I said, I'm here to let you know that if I can sit where you're sitting to get standing here with a Cadillac and a $600 suit on, there's a way to get here. I said, there's a way out. And I said, that's why I'm here, to let you know. I said, you think I'm going to come to the east side of Detroit? I said, well, it doesn't bother me because I grew up here, so you're my people anyway. But the thing is, you don't know it. Now you do.
Yep.
I said, so whatever you're looking for, whatever you need in life, and listen, happiness is not about money. Happiness is stability. Every day you can wake up and smile and happy with the skin that you live in. That's all that matters. So anyway, Clarkston, Mount Zion Church, guys, look it up on there, and then I'll send you some information, Danny, later about it. And wherever you want to post it, let them know. Please do. And thank you.
Well, Tim, you said it at the beginning that, we might not know each other that well personally, but I feel like I do, and I mean that. And I'm very grateful to know you now and that you were involved tonight because you definitely inspired a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And God bless to all of you guys. And if you need anything, just call.
Love it, Tim. Thank you so much. Just beautiful stuff by Tim. And I've done a lot of shows in my life. I've been grateful to cover a lot of major events. I don't think anything's been more important than this. And I can't stress that enough. So, it's just one of these things where, as Tim said, Jake brought it up, everyone brought this up in some shape or form. We want to help people. And, I started this show when quarantine first started. I knew it was going to be worse than maybe some people thought it was going to be as far as shutting things down and, excuse me, and us quarantining and being alone. And one of the first things I thought about was connecting to each other. And I thought about how it was going to be tough for people in recovery meetings. And I think how we have Zoom and all that stuff. But I wanted to connect to people. And that's why I started doing the task force. My great friend Dave Rieger has helped me on pretty much every show. And amazing guests have come on and friends from around the country and media people from Detroit. And I've been very lucky to have the ability to do this. But being able to do this and try to help others, and especially in the week where I find out that one of my dad's best friends and one of my close friends took their own life, this means everything to me. And I can do a great show on a Lions post game. I can call a Pistons game. I can, do a great pregame for Michigan and have, people, call in and say, Leach, you're totally right. This is great. Or Leach, you're an idiot. But this, to me, is the most important thing I can do. So thank you for all of you for being involved tonight and all the people that have listened. And please share this with whoever needs to see this or hear this or get the help that so many people so desperately need. Before we go, though, last but not least, speaking of a guy that I've known for a long time and tried to help him when I was getting sober. We worked together at J. Alexander's for about 5 years. And I love this guy to death, and he is just doing so great right now. He had to work tonight because he's working his ass off, like from 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. So we recorded this a little while ago, earlier today. This is my good friend Max, and boy, does he have a great story to tell as well. Take it away. Apologies. I think that I might have played this with no sound, so I'm going to go back and hopefully I'll be able to fix this here. I apologize about that. I think I might have not clicked the right button, so let's try this again, and this should work this time. All right, here we go. And so great to see my old friend and old coworker, the great Maximilian King Schmax. Max, you look great. It's really good to see you, buddy.
Well, you look great, Dan. How you doing, bud?
Hey, I'm doing well, and it's great to have you involved in this show tonight. And you and I go way back to our J. Alexander serving days.
Yeah,
and I definitely had my roller coaster there, where I was sober, then I wasn't sober, then I was, and then there were always times where I know that we were very connected because you kind of looked at me and saw certain things that maybe you wanted in your life when I was sober, and then times when I wasn't. You saw me at my worst. We kind of talked about that yesterday, but kind of let everyone know a little bit about you and where your journey is taking.
Yeah. So, I mean, a long time. I mean, I've been on and off, sober and not sober, drinking, not drinking, never been program based until probably it's been 5 months, 2 days ago.
It's phenomenal, Max.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. But doing it yourself, like at least me, for the longest part, I'm always like, maybe I should only drink beer, or maybe I shouldn't drink scotch, or maybe I should drink wine and then beer, but no scotch. You know what I mean? There's all these like rationalizations.
Right. Only vodka today. That's it.
Yes. If it's clear, it's all good, baby. It's all good. But when I took some time to kind of reassess, this whole COVID thing threw me for a loop. And I was like, if I'm going to be stuck at home, one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to get blasted every single day of my life and just continue down a spiral of hopelessness, or I'm going to take a step back and ask for some help. So I went to a friend of mine. His father became my sponsor, and it honestly changed my life, dude. I haven't even really thought about drinking in 5 months, which is, I guess, fairly rare. considering you know how I used to drink. I mean, as do most people.
I know how I used to try to help you, and I knew the time would come, and that's why I'm so proud of you. But I think this is an important, element of this because everyone is different. Everyone's story is different. I know for me, I went to rehab a couple times, as I've talked about, and had interventions and all that kind of stuff. But it was when I was tired of living the way I was, and it was back when we were working together at J. Alexander's, when I made this decision that I wasn't happy with who I was. I wasn't giving my life the way I wanted to people. And for you, and obviously you mentioned COVID, I think for a lot of people, we had people talk throughout the show tonight and in many different situations, that it really is kind of in this reset for everybody. What do you think? Was there a moment? Was there a situation where you woke up, or maybe you still were up, that you said, okay, I really got to do something different?
Yeah. So the last day that I used, pretty standard max using days. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know how it goes.
We're talking like a couple cases of beer, maybe a bottle of wine.
Yeah. Well, no. This was I think a bourbon journey, and I walked up to the local gas station because I never drive drunk, ever, never have. That's the one good thing about me being an alcoholic, because at least I was smart enough to never drive. Walked up to the gas station to buy literally a sparkling water. And I went to pay with some money. And apparently, because I work, I'm a server, so I work at a restaurant, I had gotten a fake $20 bill as a tip.
Oh, God.
And I went to pay this gas station attendant, and he was like, really? And I was like, excuse me? He's like, this is fake. I'm like, I had no idea. And he's like, okay, sure, stay here. And he called the police.
Oh, God.
So the cops come, and here's hammered drunk me, pleasant as ever. The guy's like, did you try to give him a fake $20 bill? I was like, listen, if I'm going to commit my first act, look at my record. I've never been in trouble. I think a fake 20 is where I'm going to start. You know what I mean? Just straight into a federal crime. No big deal. Just counterfeiting money. Not a big deal.
Jump right into that.
Yeah. So the cop was like, you need to get your life together. I know you're not in trouble. I know you're not a troublemaker, but maybe think about your life. And I went home, and the very next day I called my friend's dad. And because honestly, like you said, until you want to be sober, you can't be. So you have to want it. Like you have to want it more than breathing. If that's the thing that I've learned, is like, you have to literally work every single second of every single day to want it.
Yeah. Whatever you put before your sobriety, whatever that issue is you have, you'll lose that. A lot of times you'll lose that. Every
time. So that's the hard part. You know what I mean? Especially working in the industry, working in a restaurant, the industry celebration culture is like, oh my God, there's 4 birthdays today. We should all get blackout drunk. Yeah. Oh my God, Nana had a Buddhist hand allergy. We should probably get blackout drunk. So, I had to rewire myself a little bit, but I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired, as my grandfather would probably say.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that quickly, about that element, because there are a lot of people watching that might be in the service industry. I mean, I was in it for a long time. It's a great career. Well, I don't know if you want to call it a career. It's a great thing to do if you can handle it. What would you say to maybe people in that industry right now that, like you or like me, had these issues and maybe are scared to reach out? They're scared they can't party anymore. I mean, you know me, Max. I party harder than anybody, and I'm completely sober. So what would you say to those people that maybe are either scared to accept they have a problem, they know they have an issue, but they're scared they're not going to have any fun anymore? What would you say to them? Because you're a living, beautiful example of someone that is incredible at what they do and is able to be sober and have fun.
Well, I think the first thing is that, like, admitting that you have a problem. There's always this stigma of, like, the alcoholic. Right?
That's what we're trying to get rid of, by the way, on the show.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the stigma of someone being an alcoholic. It's like shameful. It's shameful, right? Because that's the drunk guy who you imagine in your head sitting on a curbside, sipping out of a brown bag, like lost his home, has nothing. Like, alcoholics look like regular people. We are regular people. Like, that has to change. Right? That whole thing is like admitting you have a problem. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, there's everything right with it. But until you realize that you are your problem, and you alone, you're screwed. And like I tell everybody, like, oh, I have friends that have drinking problems, and I'm like, dude, if you want, I'll invite them to meetings. Hey, do you want to come to a meeting? But it stops at the invitation, because like you have always told me, the invitation is all you get. You have to want it. There's got to be a follow through. And some people don't want that. You know what I mean? That's the difficulty. So I would just probably tell them that, like, number one, you're not alone. There's tons of people that have tons of worse problems than you do. You know what I mean? Go to one meeting and you'll be like, you will not think you have one thing in common with everybody. And then here's a guy who did something you did. Here's a woman who did something you did. Here's a person who did something you did. Here's a person who says something that you just thought 3 minutes ago. And then you're like, damn, we're all pretty much the same. Just, this is what alcoholism looks like. And that's like the easiest part to accept, and also the hardest.
Max, I could be proud of you. I could be more grateful for you to join us tonight. Before I let you go, I was just thinking, what's the craziest thing you remember me doing when I was in jail, Alexander's?
Oh,
maybe labeling a guest the mood whiz?
Yes. I think that there's been multiple pronouns that I use to this day that are only Dan Leachisms, like whizzes, wizards, warlocks. It doesn't matter what it is. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, I'll hear you on the radio, and I have a good friend who listens to your show all the time. He's like, why does he call everybody a whiz? I'm like, bro, this is a long story. How long you got?
This is real. How long is this in-depth stuff? Max, I got to tell you, though, keep doing what you're doing one day at a time. Couldn't be prouder. I'm always here for you. Like you said, all the people that are watching maybe in a similar situation that you're in with their career, they're not alone. And I love you, man. And I'm really proud of you.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, my honor. It's the great Max. There he is. Great stuff from Max. And just what a great night. Good, beautiful stuff from everybody. And I can't thank everyone enough. Leon John, the president of NAMI Metro here in Michigan. Don't forget all the information. I'm going to flash it up again. AA.org, NA.org. Reach out to a parent or friend. Of course, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I mentioned when we started the show is in honor of my great friend Mark Okster, one of my dad's best friends, who took his own life on Sunday. And I want to try to save people like Mark from not doing that. We gotta reach out and be there for each other, and not be scared to ask a friend how they're doing. And we always say, how are you doing? And I'm okay, doing great. Don't be scared or embarrassed to say, you know what, I'm having a rough night. I'm having a rough week. People have reached out to me this week, and I just told them. They said, how are you? I'm like, I'm not great, but I'm hanging in there, and I'm excited about doing the show that we're doing tonight to try to help others and save people like Mark. That was at the ELO concert with my dad. I mean, look at the smile, and he was just an incredible human being. And I want to save people like him, and we all do, so they can be around and enjoy life, even though it can be very, very tough and daunting at times. So there's the information for that. And obviously for NAMI, please go to their website, NAMImetro.org, NAMI.org for the national website for people out of state. And of course, there's the helpline, and you can contact your local county health services as well. Some people might not realize this, because I've had people reach out to me and say, what can I do? And I've actually said this on air before. Based on what county you're in, they're great local health services. Yes, it's not the way it should be overall in this country. It's a mental health crisis. There's not as many resources we should have, but it's getting better. And a lot of our counties are Oakland, Wayne, Livingston, etc., have good county free health services for mental illness, for addiction, etc. So don't think there's not a place to get help if you don't have insurance. Don't think there's not a place to get help if you don't have a lot of money. There's places to get help. And like a couple people said, and I know Jamie mentioned getting sober during quarantine, he saved all the money. He just was able to stay at home and do Zoom meetings and get sober. And I applaud everyone for sharing their stories tonight. I've already, during the show, gotten so many messages of people, thanking me for doing this. I want to thank you for watching this. And please share this. I mean, it's definitely not about me. I'm grateful to be able to be a facilitator, to speak my truth, to speak my story, to try to inspire people the best way I can. But it's all about you. And it's all about the amazing people that are on tonight. Leon, Steve, Tim, Brad, my best friend Brad Monash, Jamie, Brandon, Jake, Jordan, Scott, Max. It's all about them because they, like I said, I put this up. I was planning on doing the show for a while, and I just wanted to find the right time to do it and coordinate everyone's schedules. And by the way, there was one guest that we'll have to have on next time, Gigi, who's a 34-year sober woman who's an author as well and really wanted to be involved in the process of moving. But it's about them sharing their stories and inspiring others to know they're not alone. There should never be a stigma for mental illness, for addiction, etc. We need to decriminalize certain aspects of people that have had issues with drugs, and they're working on that right now. And that's a good reason to go out there and vote and find out what the candidates' positions are on that, because we got to decriminalize certain aspects of people that are getting put in jail or prison for pot crimes or for using and not selling. And the drug courts have worked really well, many of them, and the programs, the different recovery programs connected with law enforcement and the legal system have worked and shown more times than not that it's better to get people help than put them in prison or jail. So I can't thank all of you enough. It means the world to me to be able to help in any way I can. So as I like to always say at the end of this show, wash your hands, stay safe, spread love, not hate. And I'm just blown away by the people that wanted to be involved tonight, that as soon as I put up the message about this show, immediately messaged me. That takes a lot of courage, and it's an incredible gift to give to others. So thank you to all those people again. Thank you so much for all of you for watching. And like I said, share this with whoever you can, because I think tonight, and like I said, it's not about writing down how many. It's not about that at all. But I think we saved some lives tonight. And during this crazy year where I've lost too many friends, where we've lost too many human beings, if we can help each other and be there for each other, the world's going to be a better place. And that's, for me, what it's all about. So thank you so much to all of you. We'll see you next time on the Task Force. For all my incredible guests tonight, I'm Dan Leach. Believe in the dream. We'll see you next time.